I don't know if you heard it, but I got it.
Sounded good to me.
All right.
Welcome back to Movie Boners, everybody.
Holy crap. Season 3 of Movie Boners.
It's been a little bit, but I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we've got so many cool things coming up that I'm like, I want to do them all right now. I'm kind of getting impatient.
Oh, that's tasty.
So
yeah, I'm excited for this season and this year. We got some pretty cool things coming your way, folks.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later, though. So today, beers. My beer. Wait, what does this say? Oh, interesting. I didn't see that before. So my beer is from the WeldWorks Brewing Company.
Ooh, look at that. Like
today's episode, it's a little meta, and it'll make more sense later on. But it's called Out Forgiving Your Enemies. It has this weird little. It's like a beer can with a Superman cape on.
Yeah,
it's called Out Forgiving Your Enemies, and this little beer bottle on the cape, it says, "I was the true hero in my own story."
Okay.
Okay. I feel like Out Forgiving Your Enemies is, it's kind of a Buddhist kind of a philosophy.
Well, it works especially for like part 3.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit into part 4.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. Oh,
we'll get to it.
I guess I should tell you what the heck it is. It's a double IPA brewed with several different kinds of hops, 8.1%. So it should be fun times.
Oh man, we're both having fun down this rabbit hole today. So the design of the can, although cool, has nothing to do with the episode, so I'm not going to bother really showing it. But the name of it is Dream Crusher.
Nice.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And it is a double rye IPA.
A rye IPA. That's interesting.
And it is really freaking good, man. And it's brewed in Dallas, Texas at Deep Ellum Brewing Company. Deep Ellum.
You got there eventually.
Yep, eventually.
That's interesting. I really like rye as a grain in rye whiskeys. So I feel like I would like that in a beer as well.
It's pretty good. And I just noticed it is a 9.5%.
Damn, son.
So looks like I'm nursing this guy all afternoon.
It's going to be a fun franchise episode, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I am, before we get into our little little homework notes to get out of the way, dude, I am stoked for this episode. You know that I am very excited for this episode. My daughter has been rolling her eyes at me because I've been so excited about this one.
You told me a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember if you told me on an episode or just in real life, that The Matrix is maybe is the best movie of all time, potentially.
I honestly, dude, I get asked all the time, especially ever since we started Movie Boners, of, well, what's your all-time favorite movie? And I'm always like, everyone expects me to tell them, like, The Dark Knight, which honestly, it pretty much is. But I always feel like just going with Batman is too obvious, and not to take anything away from Batman or anything. The Dark Knight is a perfect film. But honestly, I mean, The Matrix has been like that movie for me. It changed the whole course of movie watching for me, storytelling, and I'm going to go into further stuff about it. It's got crazy sentimental value to it. Yeah, I honestly think like The Matrix is my all-time favorite movie. So I always go back to it. And yeah, this is going to be like my Forrest Gump episode.
Nice.
Where you were really excited about that. Yeah. This is that for me. But yeah, so this episode is a big one for me. Yeah, so it's going to get wordy, folks. I apologize, but not really.
Yeah, I'm very excited to hear all about it, and I have a lot of opinions about it. It's kind of it's a very complicated franchise to get into.
Dude, I saw a recent thing with Keanu Reeves about like understanding the Matrix, And he flat out said, like, I don't think I'll ever fully understand the entirety of the Matrix. It's just something that you constantly have to revisit.
Yeah.
And you just understand more and more of it as you revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
But to fully understand it might not be a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I kind of get that.
Kind of like the journey to enlightenment in that
kind
way.
of. Oh, yeah. We're going to be going. Folks, this rabbit hole is most likely gonna get nuts.
Yeah. So I'm excited for it. But before
we take that red pill,
before we go down the rabbit hole, we have some announcements, or a announcement, and then some other like homework stuff. So we have launched a merch store. We've had a lot of longtime superfan listeners ask us about merch. Finally figured out a good way to do it. Finally had some logos and stuff we thought was cool enough to worry about doing that. So it's through Teespring. If you go to our social media, it's linked all over there now. There's hoodies and T-shirts and stickers and a pint glass for those of you that open beers with us at the beginning of each episode. So our plan for it right now, it's kind of a thank you for our listeners, like all of the people that have been supporting us, sharing the message of the Movie Boners. We wanted to say thank you. So everything there is as cheap as we could possibly make it. And we just want to get it in your hands, get it out in the world, and say thank you that way. And then we also plan to keep it kind of revolving, release some new stuff. We have a couple of new logos and stuff that are really cool coming up in the future.
Yeah. So this will be kind of like, they'll be there for like a quarter or so. We haven't really honed in on the length of time that they'll be available, but the idea is to keep the merch fresh, and just kind of come up with some new stuff. I am so excited for one of the designs that we will share with everyone a little bit down the road while we like really iron it out. But this design, oh my fucking God, I love it.
Yeah. And you had the really good idea, and I think is what we'll do is to keep the releases kind of limited and special. So when a design leaves, it's not going to come back the same way. And so those of you that get in now, you're kind of the founders, you're the early birds, the OGs, and nobody else will have this later on when it gets popular or whatever.
Right. But either way, we really appreciate everyone listening, watching, all that. Keep sharing it. Go buy some cool, silly movie boner shit.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll become a talking point for out in the public. I know when I wear my movie boners t-shirt, I definitely notice people giving me the like second glances. Does that shirt say what I think it says? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, so go check it out. And send us, like, if you order shit, send us pictures of it, you know, wearing it out and that.
Yeah, tag us
out
in
in
it.
public or whatnot, tag us in it and all that good stuff. So go check it out. Very excited about it.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. Yeah, and if you have suggestions, ideas, designs, we're open to stuff. So definitely reach out. This is a group project.
Yeah. So very excited for what's coming.
And then the other thing I wanted to do, we did it last week, wanted to make it like a segment of the podcast.
I like that you said last week. We haven't.
Last episode, it's been 3 or so weeks. New things we're watching. I have been catching up on a lot of new stuff.
Whatever, you've probably just been binging Yellowstone the whole time.
Okay, yes, I have been binging Yellowstone. And
called it.
And 1883, the spinoff of Yellowstone. And actually, there's another show, The King of... What the fuck is that show called? It's another Taylor Sheridan show on Paramount about this like island. It's not an island. It's a community of prisons, basically. There's just a bunch of prisons in a narrow area. And it has... God damn, I wasn't ready to talk about this show. What is this show?
At all.
King
That's
of... Okay, well, you're really throwing me off here.
I didn't do anything. I made one sarcastic comment of you've probably just been binging Yellowstone like crazy, and you went into the spinoff, and now another show from the same creator.
Yeah. So it's called The Mayor of Kingstown. It's a
I know what show you're talking about. Is that the one with Jeremy Renner?
Yeah, Jeremy Renner, Diane Weist, and Kyle Chandler, and it's pretty darn good. Oh. Right. But I have not watched that much of that. In the movie world, I watched Antlers finally.
Don't tell me anything. I haven't gotten around to watching it yet.
I love Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons. They're both great. The Wendigo is cool. It's a cool movie. The monster is cool. I liked it.
Cool.
I watched this random ass movie. It's a Hulu original with Chloe Grace Moretz called Mother/Android, and it's like, and I think Matt Reeves produced it. It was somehow related to the Batman, and it was a pretty interesting movie. It's like if A Quiet Place and I, Robot had a baby, where there's like that all the androids kind of go crazy and start chasing people, just like a zombie movie with androids, kind of. And and they need to like try to get to a safe zone while she's pregnant, and not make noise because the androids will find them and hunt them down and chase them and stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, weird.
I thought it was cool.
Okay.
I saw Ghostbusters Afterlife finally.
All right.
And it was fun. I liked it, but this complaint's going to come up a couple times. I'm noticing a trend that I'm kind of getting over, which is the format where
member berries.
Yeah, the format where a sequel comes out decades later and literally does the exact same thing as the original, and even throughout the story makes fan service references or has an original characters return. It feels like the Force Awakens model, and it needs to stop. I am done with that kind of thing. It was fun. I love Paul Rudd. I like all the characters in it. It was certainly better than the 2016 Ghostbusters, which I think is interesting because it's still centered on this girl who is interested in science and all this stuff. It's a female-centered movie, but it's just an interesting difference.
Yeah, I really like the new Ghostbusters. I did have the thought of like, Jake will enjoy this movie, but he will say, I'm kind of tired of just like being over member berries of everything.
Yeah.
So called it.
You're right about that. And in that vein, I saw Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yes, you did.
It was very fun, very member berries for anybody who's seen.
Yeah, but their member berries is different.
It is different.
Theirs was like different. It served an actual purpose to the story.
Yeah.
And I wrote a whole. Oh yeah, we have a blog on our site now. More to come. Jake has the first one up there. It's hilarious. Please go read it. And I'm going to be posting my first one, which is not hilarious, but super like sentimental, if you will, all about Spider-Man No Way Home, because that movie, like, it's my favorite MCU movie ever.
Yeah, it's pretty massive, and I think it's very interesting. I think the multiverse is the most interesting thing about the MCU and comics in general, and I made me more interested in the new Doctor Strange movie with Scarlet Witch for that reason. So it accomplished what it should have. It was a fun time.
Yep.
Not really anything wrong with it overall. Completely randomly, I also saw a movie called The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which it has Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman. It's interesting. I really liked The Lobster. I know you didn't really like The Lobster. And I thought the concept of Dogtooth was fascinating. The guy who made those two movies also made this movie, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And it's a lot like Dogtooth in pacing and style. It's very slow. It's a horror movie. It's an extremely different kind of horror movie. And if you kind of wait out the slowness, it gets pretty wild. But everyone's behavior and dialogue feels like they have Asperger's the whole time. Like these big serious actors deliver these lines in ways that are so different than I've ever seen before. And I think it just adds to the off-puttingness. So I liked it. I thought it was very different, very weird, but kind of cool. So it was fun.
Yeah. I was very interested in it, and then I watched The Lobster and was very like, well, I don't know if I want to watch anything by this guy anymore, because I really did not like The Lobster at all.
Yeah, I would say it's different enough from The Lobster. The Lobster is a love story, and this is a horror movie.
Yeah,
but
I still like it. Keeps popping up on my what I think it's on Netflix right now, where it keeps popping up on movies you might like list. And I'm always like, one of these nights I'll watch it, and then I'm like, no, I'm going to rewatch something else.
Yeah, it's weird. It's very different, and probably not for everybody. And then I guess the only other thing I watched Tiger King season 2.
Okay,
because
I watched that.
And it was kind of like a member berries thing, because it took me back to the beginning of pandemic when it was like the most popular thing everybody was talking about.
So I enjoyed season 2 of Tiger King, but I don't know if the first season of Tiger King just completely set that bar too high, or just made every other absurd, ridiculous thing going on with that world. If it just kind of made all that seem like, I don't know. The second season, I thought this is wild, but at the same time, I was like, yeah, it's not. I'm not really surprised or shocked by anything going on right now.
Yeah, I do feel the same way. Where I was like, yeah, this is now normal, which is kind of a sad thought, but it's totally normal.
Well, and then they made the spinoff about what's his name, Doc something. The weird culty guy who's got the polygamy. Yeah, so they made a spinoff on him. I have not watched it yet, primarily because, one, I already know the fucker doesn't go to jail like he should, and also cult kind of mentality freaks me out, and I'm not sure that I want to watch a whole thing about him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Although, speaking of culty things freaking me out, did you see they are making a movie about Jim Jones and his whole cult? No. Do you know who is in talks to play him?
Oh, wait. I feel like I might know this. Once you say
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to sit through a 3-hour biop about this shit, and I am going to hate every second of it.
Yeah, I feel like that's great casting. He's charismatic enough to pull it off, I think.
Yeah. And then in other fun news, Martin Scorsese is getting ready to make a mini-series. I think it's on Hulu, will be on Hulu, about H.H. Holmes. It'll be based on Devil in the White City, the book. Please go read that book. It's so fucking good. Keanu Reeves is in talks to play H.H. Holmes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was like, all right, totally down with that.
Yeah. I've been following the Scorsese trying to do that for a long time. I feel like it was on Amazon, but maybe it moved.
I kind of hope it's on Hulu.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's because I feel like, well, I don't know. I haven't really watched any of the Amazon shows, just a few of the movies, and have not been wildly impressed with their movies so far. So I'm hoping it's on Hulu.
I've liked a couple of their shows, but I do feel like Hulu is upping their game. With that stuff.
Well, I have not really watched anything super brand new. I've just been kind of prepping for our episodes. So I've been watching movies for our third episode of this new season. So the episode that'll be 2 weeks from now. I've been prepping that. Just kind of revisiting some other movies. Like I rewatched Seven Psychopaths. And
great movie.
I was like, man, Jake talked about it all the time. I haven't watched it in forever. And then rewatched it and was like, this is so much better. It's so good. Go watch Seven Psychopaths. And then just with watching all this other stuff, I've just kind of been doing a mental palate cleanse at the end of the night and started rewatching Friends because I'm a 90s kid, and that's what we do.
Yep.
So,
we are doing the exact same thing, except we're about to finish our binge of Friends.
Yeah. And it's just, yeah. And then I've been watching a show on Netflix with my daughter. We've been watching that Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous.
Okay.
It's an animated Jurassic Park show on Netflix.
Interesting.
It's pretty interesting. It takes place during Jurassic World, and then shortly after, like 6 months or so after the events of Jurassic World, it takes place on the island.
Interesting.
It's like a slightly grown-up kid show.
Yeah.
Slightly. Like, there's no blood, but you still see dinosaurs and people get eaten.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
that's been kind of, it's a humorous show. It's fun. And then, I guess I did start, okay, so we told everyone at length during our Akira episode, like, we're not anime folk, but my daughter has gotten me to start watching Demon Slayer, which is like the huge anime show that's going on right now. So I've started watching that, and I will fully admit, it's got some pretty cool things in it. So I really like the demons that are in it. They look cool. They're fun. And it's an interesting story. So
cool.
I guess that's the newest thing that I've been watching. Other than that, yeah, I haven't really watched anything new. It's weird. Like, I watched Spider-Man and Matrix 4, and I'm just waiting for Scream.
Yeah.
So
you said you've watched Spider-Man like 3 different times, and
yeah, I've seen Spider-Man 3 times.
Matrix 4 a handful of times.
Yeah, I've watched Matrix 4 2 or 3 times now. But I rewatched both movies for different reasons.
Yeah.
Spider-Man just kind of like, it struck everything that's in me as a Spider-Man in general fan from like childhood to now. It also kind of like really surged my fandom for comic books and the stories and these characters. It hit me on like a very sentimental, kind of nerdy, emotional level. Whereas Matrix 4, I watched a couple times just so that I had more talking points for this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good transition. I was going to say, you talking about anime was a decent transition because I meant to watch the Animatrix, which was like a big thing, and I never did.
Oh, yeah, the in-between of the first Matrix and Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah.
Which really all you need to watch Animatrix for is the fact that the Osiris is trying to get those, like, the message out, and they do before they blow up. That's pretty much the entire thing. And they mentioned the Osiris once in Matrix Reloaded, and it's a line that most people don't even realize is in the movie. So you're not missing a whole lot, honestly.
Yeah, they kind of forced the tie in there. So let's talk about the Matrix franchise and all 4 movies so far. We're going to do spoilers, so if you haven't seen the 4th one yet, go see it, stream it, do whatever, come back.
Yeah.
We're going to spoil the other 3 movies. Those came out in the early 2000s, so you should have seen them by now.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been so excited for this one. I just thought of something to say, and it's gone. Oh, damn. I like how you said we've watched the first 4 so far. They have not actually been greenlit for any further sequels yet, and I'm not sure that they're going to make any more.
I don't know either. It's kind of a weird thing where they reopened a series that was closed. It wasn't really open-ended, at least in my feeling. They reopened it, then left it open-ended, basically. So they are essentially rebooting it, or it feels like it could be a reboot where they release another movie. But yeah, everybody and every interview I've seen with Lano, with Keanu, with everybody, they're like, yeah, I doubt it. I don't think so. So it's kind of weird.
Right. We'll obviously be getting into that, but yeah, there are going to be a ton of spoilers, especially with that 4th one. You almost can't talk about the 4th one without spoiling the whole thing.
Yeah.
I definitely have some very strong opinions on the fourth movie.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think you and I are probably going to share a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have some feelings on Reloaded and Revolutions that are not that popular.
Okay.
But I have my opinions on it. I'm excited for that. Yeah, let's dive into the Matrix.
Okay.
Because this is, oh my god, I've been so excited for this one.
Yeah, I have a lot of the things that you said to say as well. I think that the Matrix is weird and interesting as a topic, partly because the Wichowskis are weird, and not for the reason that most people think that I'm going to say, but they're weird specifically because they're put on this pedestal of like great action directors because of the Matrix. But that's the first movie is really the only great movie that they've ever made. Cloud Atlas was good, but I wouldn't say it was.
I really like Cloud Atlas. I do really like Cloud Atlas.
But I would say it's great on the level of the Matrix. And
right.
They wrote V for Vendetta. That's a great movie, but they didn't direct it. And they also wrote Assassins, which I like, but not a great movie. But their other movies, Speed Racer, Jupiter Ascending, and Revolutions, and Reloaded, and now Resurrection, all kind of iffy to not great movies.
I will say, all right, so Reloaded and Revolutions, I'm actually a big fan of both of them. I genuinely enjoy both of them.
Okay.
But they lack the same feel that first Matrix had. And you and I have talked about, and rewatching the franchise, getting ready for this, I kind of had like a moment where I went, huh, the Matrix franchise and the Wichowskis, because you brought up like their other films, I was like, kind of feel like they are the sci-fi genre of M. Night Shyamalan, where they come out with like the stellar film that puts them up on that pedestal. Yeah. That pretty much becomes the focal point of their entire career. Everything will be compared to that one project. And a lot of the time, all the other projects they make fall short of it. So even though I'm a fan of Reloaded and Revolutions, I would say they don't come close to having the same feel or the same just like jaw-dropping moments. I think they're still pretty cool.
Yeah. I think the main reason for that, I mean, we'll get into it when we get to them, but the main reason for that has a lot, I think, to do with the time they came out, the technical side of it and everything, and not just the story or the writing or whatever.
Right. But like, so... Yeah, they wrote Assassins, but they also wrote and directed a movie called Bound, which is like a lesbian crime kind of film.
Okay.
It's got Gina Gershon, right? And damn it, I didn't have it pulled up. I meant to bring it up.
With Jennifer Tilly,
Gina Gershon, and Joe Pantoliano, who played Cypher in The Matrix.
Yeah.
So it's like a lesbian crime drama movie. I've seen it. It's pretty, like, not great, in my opinion. I wasn't a huge fan of it. Of course, when I watched it as, like, a 15-year-old, I thought the one lesbian scene in the whole movie was like, oh, dang, they're kissing. But yeah, like I really like Cloud Atlas. I think Cloud Atlas is kind of underestimated, or not. Like, it's overlooked heavily. I think it's a beautiful film, and the story that they tried to tell through all those different timelines and intertwine so many different actors into so many different roles. It's a huge undertaking. And it works for the most part. I think the music is beautiful. The movie's really cool.
I think
it's not for everyone.
The complexity of it gets the closest to what that first Matrix captured.
Yeah. Speed Racer man, I hated that movie for so long, and then like I finally got to a point where I went, oh, it's not that bad, and then I've never watched it since because I've just never felt the need to, or the drive to. I've never watched Jupiter Ascending. I was going I was going to think about seeing it, but even that first trailer, you know how sometimes you watch a movie trailer and immediately you're like,
nope,
oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, I texted you this while we were preparing for this episode. I was like, we need to do an episode on Jupiter Ascending because I want you to see it and I want to hear what you think about it, and it is crazy.
So I'm still up for doing that, especially because like your response to my like, no, I haven't seen it, but I've heard that it's just like so bad, and you're like, it's something that triggers my curiosity. So that'll probably be coming soon, folks.
Yeah.
And then they did something else recently, didn't they?
Not that I know.
Or is that it? That couldn't have been it. Actually, it probably was.
Yeah, they haven't done much. I mean, they've been busy with other things, I think.
Well, it's weird because they do like writing, but they don't do
the Sense8 show on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, I never watched Sense8. Oh, I guess that is like their whole career right there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so small and simple and kind of crazy that they're put on that pedestal, but also as good as the Matrix is, makes sense.
But it's the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, their style of filmmaking, the way they want to tell their stories and film their stories, that's what really makes them kind of oddballs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then I remember when both the Wichowskis announced that they were like going through the sex change, being transgender and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And you normally hear celebrities announcing that, and it's more like, okay, these days, but back then it was still very like, oh my God, what are they doing? Except for when it came to the Wichowskis, I remember like the general consensus of people was like, yeah, but that kind of,
that makes sense.
That's on point.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That actually explains a lot,
like,
actually.
Yeah, like, cool. All right. And you move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because like I thought about it, because normally if I'm a huge fan of a movie by like a writer and director, if they do the whole collaboration, I will generally seek out their entire filmography. Like I want all their stuff.
Yeah.
Except for the Wichowskis.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is that? And I was like, well, I have no real desire to watch Speed Racer again. Like if someone was watching it, I wouldn't complain. I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, it's the most goofy looking CGI you'll ever see, but okay, for like 3 hours too.
Part of me wonders, are they ahead of their time? Are they so brilliant that there just isn't the technology or the human mind? We have not even evolved enough to the point of having the ability to formally or conceptualize their ideas on film. The CGI doesn't really cut it. The story structure is like current structure is just too simple because people like simple things, and they just can't put it out there in a way yet that works. Maybe they have brilliant ideas, but the movies haven't worked because they're held back by some standard. I really know. Or maybe they're crazy, and this is how it manifests, that they're actually delusional people that made something that made the Matrix, and everybody's like, the community kind of takes that and they're like, let's make this make sense by applying these other philosophies and all
maybe. I mean, okay, so that first Matrix, not only did it just like blow film goers, filmmakers, Hollywood, I mean, everyone associated with movies. That first Matrix movie came out, and everyone was just like, what the fuck did we just see?
Yeah.
Everybody.
1999 was the point where timeline diverged, and filmmaking, action movies, everything, storytelling just changed completely.
And honestly, you look at 1999 and you're like, well, what movie may have been the influencer? It's The Matrix. I mean, The Matrix changed everything. Mm-hmm. And it's been spoofed so many freaking times. Like, let me correct that. The Matrix hasn't been spoofed. Bullet time has been spoofed or reused. I think it's like 50-something times in just a couple of years after The Matrix came out. Everyone wanted to use it because it was so crazy.
It was revolutionary, not just in a film sense, but just in the process of setting it up, setting up all those cameras. The behind the scenes of The Matrix is crazy, where they set up all those different cameras and to do this quick shot. It's crazy.
Yeah, so they made a whole separate kind of short film on the making of The Matrix. It's called The Matrix Revisited. It is the complete behind the scenes, how they set up the shots, how all the different training that the whole cast had to go through, the wire work, all the stunt work that went along with it. Mm-hmm. It is crazy watching these setups. It's crazy watching that amount of green screen, but it translates really well. And I think it's kind of weird rewatching the first Matrix. You're like, man, this movie just looks so clean and it fits so well. When I say it looks so clean, I mean like everything just fit. The green screen that's in it does not immediately jump out at the screen as like, oh, okay, it's green screen. It feels natural. Mm-hmm. They did a great job of making sure that while they're inside the Matrix, things are like slightly green hued and dirty looking. When they're in the real world, it's very like organic and kind of like torn. Yeah. With like a very, very subtle blue haze to everything. Where I think that's where they really got too caught up in their own creativity with the sequels, because the green became, in my opinion, too prominent inside the Matrix. Yeah. And then they got kind of weird with the raving, like in Zion and stuff. Like, okay, I don't think we need like an electronic rave in an organic kind of tribal setting. But yeah, that'll come when we get to Reloaded.
Yeah, I think the first one captured so well using the technology of the time, revolutionizing the technology of the time to create this new bullet time effect, but still make it feel real, practical effects. That's where the Reloaded loses me some, because then they do digitize Matrix to do things that you couldn't really do in real life. So it makes sense, right? But it is more noticeable. It takes you out of it a little bit.
It's very noticeable, and unfortunately, it's most notable during two of the coolest action scenes, or what should be the coolest action scenes. Yeah, the Burly Brawl is like that had to have been so awesome writing that part of the script down of Neo is going to go hand-to-hand combat with like 80 Agent Smiths. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be awesome. And it still is very awesome. But it's like the CGI work in it just didn't render long enough, maybe? I don't know.
Well, it was also 2003. So yeah. I just think,
but even in 2003,
the best.
I remember watching Reloaded and being like, "Wow, that looks very like that is like obviously, painfully obviously, CGI." And then, like even in Reloaded again, the other part that's really bad with the CGI, in my opinion, where it just like it takes you out of the sequence, is the end of the highway sequence. Yeah, when Neo is flying them out of the explosion. That kind of takes me out a little bit. And then in the third one in Revolutions, the part that I'm always bummed with it, because I'm like, you didn't need this. And it really bums me out that they have to do a slow-mo close-up of it, because it just didn't fit the rest of the entire story. But that slow-motion punch between Neo and Smith, where he punches through the raindrops, I hate that shot. I hate that shot.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like, I didn't need this. At no point in the other fight scenes throughout the whole series have I needed like a super CGI'd slow-mo punch through rain. Like, I don't need it. I don't need to see all the ripples in Agent Smith's face. I just don't need to see that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that quite a bit. Not that scene specifically, but I think the larger problem that leads up to maybe why they put that in. During the whole Matrix evolution of the character of Neo, he starts as a normal guy, builds up his power as he starts to believe in and use the Matrix, break the boundaries of the Matrix, and he becomes so powerful and so fast that they, I think, have a trouble showing you how fast and how powerful Neo is and how fast and powerful Agent Smith is. So that all those big fights, especially between Agent Smith and Neo, I think that they try to go back to, don't forget, they are like, they can move faster than anybody in the world, and they can fly, and they can do all this stuff. And so they try to re-ground you in that reality while also showing you them just fight as normal people with normal gravity and stuff.
So I thought of that too. Like, it serves as a reminder of like the super being that Neo is and the super being that Smith is at that point, thanks to Neo. Yeah. But I feel like we've already kind of been reminded of that whole sequence as they are fighting in the sky, and every time they throw a punch that hit each other at the same time, they make sonic booms in the rain.
Yeah.
So I think we've already established, like, you've reminded us like 6 times of how powerful these two actually are. They're pretty evenly matched. I actually, and they do kind of a member Mary thing of like their first fight in the third Matrix. I still wish, even though I don't hate Revolutions near as much as everybody, well, not everybody, but the general audience seem to. But I still, to this day, always find myself wishing, you know what would have been a cooler fight between these two? Is if it was just like a solid kung fu brutal fight.
Yeah.
Like the aerial fight stuff, yeah, it's cool. It's all right. But as a fan of this franchise, as a huge Neo fan of what Neo like has to go through to get to this point, I still wish it would have gone back to the real basics of the Matrix as Neo is learning kung fu and learning to fight and stand up to the essentially Smith.
That first dojo scene with Morpheus.
Yeah. Yeah, like I would have loved to see Neo really hitting that point of like self-doubt again and maybe just having to rebuild the fight. You know, go back to like the basics of Neo.
Yeah.
You know, don't rely on flying away, because he kind of relies on flying away in the second one. I would have loved to see him keep his feet on the ground.
Yeah.
But we're going into the third one. We should probably go back to the first one. But
you saying that made me think of another idea, which I'm not trying to rewrite the Matrix, but that would have been cool. And it would have been cool if they had not. So Neo's whole thing is that he knows he's in a simulation. He can essentially ignore the rules or bend the rules of the simulation where the programs have to follow the rules, generally, except for Smith. But it would have been pretty cool if the system was rewriting the rules and Neo wasn't always constantly able to do all these super things.
Yeah.
He'd have to like relearn them or bend them in a different way, or if they rewrote the rules so that now he was in a hyper-realistic gravity normal kung fu fight and he can't use his powers because he hasn't figured out what changed or whatever.
Right. Especially since when he re-enters the Matrix and Smith is all-consuming and he tells him, look at the world I've created. Do you like what I've done here? I would have thought that Smith rewriting the entire world would have put something into place to control Neo.
Yeah.
To kind of capitalize on, I can hold him down a little bit. That would have been cool to see Neo have like his moment. But again, this is all Revolutions talk. Let's go to the first one. Yeah. Before I go like super wordy on my Matrix talk, you kick this off.
Okay. So the first one, obviously, I think it's great as well. The first one is pretty darn perfect for a movie. A movie even nowadays, it's held up flawlessly. I have zero issues with the first movie, and I think it like we said, it did revolutionize the technology and influenced everything since. I don't think we've had a movie influence film, especially action movies, like that until maybe John Wick. John Wick may be the next generation, which is Keanu Reeves again, so that's
I agree with you. I think John Wick has made such a stamp on action that people are going to start following suit with it. I really do believe that.
Yeah. And I've heard so many like filmmakers talk about it, and I think we started to see it already. But the first one is so cool. It didn't, even though it did like kind of do new things with the bullet time cameras and showed us new ideas, there were a lot of things that it didn't invent, but maybe just showed Western audiences in a new way. It uses so much Eastern philosophy, which we'll get into in depth later on, but also Eastern action films like John Woo and Chow Yun-fat and Hard Boiled. They were doing all this slow-mo stuff for a long time, way before there's so much Eastern influence in the Wachowskis style, which is very interesting. And I think it gets credit, but also it's not as big as the Matrix. So how is it going to get as much credit as it really deserves, I guess?
Yeah, I think I have to laugh, and you and I have now mentioned this a few times on the show and just in general. The Wachowski, anime was so influential in the Matrix.
Yeah.
So I still have to laugh at myself for being such a Matrix fan and then not being a big fan of its influencers. I don't know what that says or if that's like really a normal thing, but it was funny. Like, and it was so prominent to me when we watched Akira and seeing certain parts and just the timing of Akira, the storytelling, how it like escalated out of nowhere, and you find yourself at one point going, "How did we get here?"
Yeah,
like weren't we just driving a motorcycle on the road? Matrix is kind of that way, where you're like, "How did we get to this point where Neo is like controlling the Matrix around him as a helicopter's crashing into a building? He was just in the back seat of a car having the fucking tracer get pulled out of his gut." But it cracks me up, and I kind of want to go back and rewatch Akira again, which I've been meaning to anyways, but now just to like, all right, I want to specifically watch for the moments in these animes and mangas that directly influence the Wachowskis on the images, the storytelling, kind of the creation of these characters. And I had to laugh because when I rewatched the series, getting ready for this, I want to say this week, but I watched it like 2 weeks ago. I was like, dude, The Matrix is essentially the only great live action anime that we've gotten. Like, it's the only one that has worked perfect, and it's not even anime.
Yeah. That's a good point. And when you were talking about Revolutions, when their power level is so big that they're creating sonic booms and stuff, it reminded me of like Dragon Ball Z, where they go Super Saiyan and they're a little bit crazier than any hero has ever been before on a whole nother level. And that's kind of what the Matrix becomes. And it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I had that thought rewatching. I was like, this is... I almost feel like I'm a very hypocritical movie fan, which we've already joked so many times that we are.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, maybe I should force myself to become a huge anime fan just because I'm such a Matrix fan. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to like both, but I don't.
yeah, I know what you mean. You still have that, even if you don't like it, you have a humble respect for.
Yeah, I can respect the influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first Matrix is so... Man, I remember seeing the previews for it for the first time, and the previews didn't really show you a lot, except it was that kind of trailer where your brain still broke after a 30-second slot, where you were like, wait a minute, I can't even figure out what they were just trying to tell me.
Yeah.
And, like, I remember telling my daughter before she watched it last year, like, what the Matrix was about. And I was telling her, like, okay, so essentially it's in the future where machines, so like robots and technology, have become so like self-aware and sentient that they are controlling the world and they use humans as batteries. And she was like, stop. It's like, oh yeah, and we live in a computer simulation.
Yeah.
Stop it, Dad. Just stop it. But that's also something that has like kind of been really shocking to me, of the influence that the first Matrix really made on the world was not just in filmmaking and in Hollywood, but in general philosophy.
Yeah.
It blew up the notion and the idea, the theory that we actually do live in a simulation. Now, I am not one that goes down this path. For longtime listeners, you know, I tend to not follow the rabbit hole down the conspiracy theory, but I still crack up of how, like, The Matrix is no longer just mentioned in, like, oh, it's a great movie. The Matrix is used as, like, no, we live in the Matrix. This is a real thing. You're like, okay, folks.
Have you heard of Matrixism? There's an actual like religion that formed because of the people's minds latched on to the ideas of the movie so much that they made an actual religion that basically follows the principles of these ideas. And they're very based in accepting all of these other religions that fed into the Matrix films, and they are part of this overall story of predicting that there's a one and we're in a simulation and we need to take the red pill and all this stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is wild to me that we are in 2022 and the influence that the first Matrix movie had on the world is still arguably just as strong as when it came out in 1999. Yeah. Where you get new audiences that watch it, you know, with the fourth one coming out, so many youngsters got introduced to the Matrix trilogy, and depending on their age, probably had no clue what the hell they were watching.
Yeah.
I sat my daughter down to watch The Matrix last year and was like, okay, you're not going to understand the movie. You're going to be confused, but the action sequences are going to be really cool and you're going to love those. She was like, okay. That opening shot scene with Trinity, my daughter was immediately like, what? I was like, just wait.
Yeah.
and then the story evolves from there. And by the time the movie ended, I look at my daughter, I'm like, wasn't that amazing? She goes, I don't like my brain hurting this much because of a movie. I was like, okay, did you at least like the action? She goes, yeah, the action was cool, but I don't want to watch that again. It was like...
Yeah,
it's like, kid, don't feel bad. No one gets the movie.
It's great sci-fi on the level of like 1984, where that book came out way ahead of its time, and now it kind of becomes a benchmark for people. And you're like, hey, maybe this was a warning that we should have adhered to. The Matrix is that as well, where as we get closer and closer to AI, as we get closer and closer to Facebook's metaverse, where we're all going to live in VR constantly, that maybe this is a warning sign that the Wichowskis had. They came back from the future to warn us, hey, don't go down this path, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, but we're doing it anyway. It's bad. I'm going to try. I can't promise Jake won't veer off. Sorry, Jake, no offense. I'm going to attempt to keep it as movie-focused as possible, but I promise you we're probably going to venture into a lot of the theories and all that. But, I mean, the philosophies of the Matrix is crazy because, and you've mentioned it a couple times now, it draws a lot of influence from, Buddhism and a lot from Christianity. Which, if you're wondering how it does that, did you watch the movie? The name of the ship is Nebuchadnezzar. There are scriptures in the film. Neo as the
one savior. Yeah. There's so many influences on that level. It's very interesting because the whole philosophy of the Matrix and Neo and all of this stuff is not only influenced by these other religions, but it's influenced by everything. It's by the universe, essentially, by the characters and the stories and movies and books. There was a really interesting thing, kind of talking in general about all of the Matrix. Lana Wachowski gave an interview and kind of talked about what they were trying to achieve with the story, and they kind of wanted the audience to go through the 3 movies and experience something similar to what the main characters experience kind of while they're in the movies. And I think she said that the first movie is sort of typical in its approach, and the second movie is deconstructionist. It assaults all the things that you thought to be true in the first movie.
Yep.
And so many people were very upset, and they were like, stop attacking me, in the same way that people get upset by deconstructionist philosophy. And then the third movie is the most ambiguous because it asks you to actually participate in constructing the meaning of it. And I think that's largely why it got the lowest rating. I don't think it's the worst movie, but people have the worst impression of it because it didn't tell them what it meant. It didn't give them a nice happy ending.
I've always said that the Matrix sequels. So the second one, I don't know. When the second one came out, I remember people being fans of it. I remember telling people Reloaded was cool. I remember working at Showtime when it came out on DVD and people rented it and came back and were like, dude, this movie was killer. I have no clue what the architect was talking about, but this was awesome. And then when Revolutions came out, that was the one I remember a lot of people being like, what the hell? Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, and I still kind of hold on to the thought, is I think people were bummed that the whole Matrix trilogy was spoiled in the first Matrix.
Yeah.
They tell you, here is what is going to happen.
Yeah.
This is the only path where there can be peace, where things can change. Neo, you're gonna die. And people assumed him getting shot at the end of the first Matrix was, that was it. No, the dude has to die. He's actually gotta die. And he does. Yeah. So I always assumed people were just bummed that they were told what would happen. And that's exactly what happened. So I kind of respect the Wichowskis for keeping up and following through with, no, we told the audiences, especially with the architect, we're going to destroy everything you thought to be true, and then we're going to tell you, hey, by the way, this is the 6th version, and we're going to make more. And you're like, no!
Yeah, that's the whole thing of the Matrix, is that there is a... what's the word where Morpheus is following this prediction, or I don't know.
Oh, the prophecies.
Prophecy. He's following a prophecy that there is a one. He needs to do these things, and he's going to save us and release everybody from the Matrix or whatever. And so when the struggle of the movie is that philosophy going to come true? Is that prophecy going to come true? Or is someone going to fail? Is someone going to reject it? And it's not. And I think it's the struggle is they get close so many times to being pulled away from not fulfilling the prophecy, and then they ultimately do, and it goes according to plan. And in hindsight, it's not as interesting, but watching it and all the times where Neo could have walked away or somebody could have interrupted it, like Cypher or whatever. There's so many, struggles in the film that keep it interesting throughout. So even though it does end up doing exactly what they said would do, there were so many times where you're like, I don't think they're going to make it, and that makes it so exciting.
Yeah. So all the like crazy philosophy, all that kind of stuff aside, so the Matrix for me, and if you've listened to our very first episode ever, I kind of talked not super in depth, like not deep dive at least, of what that first Matrix actually, like the fan that I am of it. Mm-hmm. So that was the first rated R movie that I got to see in the theater. I got to see it with my brother and my dad. And so every time I watch it, my brain immediately hits the like nostalgia of sitting in that theater seat with my mom or with my brother and my dad sitting next to me and watching the story unfold. So the Matrix hits a very deep emotional kind of chord for me. But I remember watching that movie and just being blown away with the complexity of the story. Because up to that point, I hadn't really seen any movie that was crazy complex. That was like very, you have to use your brain and you have to keep up with what the dialogue is telling you.
Yeah.
Like, you have to keep up. If you don't keep up, you have no clue what's going on for the rest of the film. You know, I think the closest one to that would be like the Terminator, the first two Terminator movies. Or three, because the third one had come out, but the third one is meh. But that was like the closest to like super complex sci-fi with this whole idea of machines actually being in control and how do we stop the machines, or can you stop the machines? How do you adapt to life and all that? But the storytelling structure in the Matrix really blew me away because it's my favorite kind of version of like the hero's tale, mainly because instead of the hero finally being like, oh, I believe in myself finally, Neo never actually believes in himself.
Yeah.
Even when he like comes back after being shot by Smith, he's not back because he believed in himself. He came back because Trinity like used some crazy powers.
She has Disney magic to kiss him.
To kind of resurrect him. And he comes back and suddenly he sees like the Matrix for what it really is, where he actually sees all the code. But at like no point does he believe in himself. And I think that is such an interesting take where he operates solely after that moment throughout the whole franchise. That includes the fourth one, of never actually believing in himself.
Yeah.
Everything he does from that point on is all for Trinity, and it's all for Zion. Nothing else.
Yeah, it's my favorite version of the hero's journey as well, where, especially early on, when he's approached with this absurd idea, these agents are after him, Morpheus calls him, and he goes out on the ledge, and Morpheus is like, just trust me, just do it. And he rejects it. He's like, no, fuck this, I'm going back inside. And gets captured and goes through that whole ordeal. But throughout, he is told constantly by the Oracle, by everybody, you just believe. Well, the Oracle tests his belief by being like, she doesn't tell him he's not the one. She asks him, and he tells her, I'm not the one. And she's like, well, if that's what you believe.
So his meeting with the Oracle, that first meeting with the Oracle, it is one of my favorite scenes in that whole movie.
Yeah.
Which is great, because there's like no action. It's strictly like all dialogue. And a lot of people confuse the dialogue. I have seen so many people that are like, the Oracle tells him he's not the one.
Yeah, definitely.
No, she doesn't.
No, she asks him, she's like, what do you think? Like, I wrote it down, I forget what she says, but she's like, essentially, you are whatever you believe you are, or something like that.
And he's like
he says, I'm not the one, am I? I know I'm not the one. And she's like,
so she does that line of like, I like you, kid. And he goes, but, and right there, she's like, oh, he's self-doubting right now. And I love her line here. And this is the line that everyone confuses, where she tells him, but it looks like you're waiting for something.
Yeah.
And I can't give it to you. I can't tell you. And he takes that, as well as the whole audience took that as like, oh, she just told him he's not the one. And it's like, no, she told him like, no, you are expecting to be told something instead of just believing in it and believing in yourself. You need to figure this out on your own.
Yeah.
I can't.
Stop waiting and just do it. Just be the one.
I think it's one of the greatest interpretations of the like, I can show you the door, but you're the one that has to go through it.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that's also the line that she says to him. But, you know, she points out the sign to him in Latin where it's know thyself. Mm-hmm. And even when he looks at it and looks back at her, you can tell that he's still like, I don't know, because even before he was unplugged, he was living a dual life that neither was very lucrative for him. Like the black market programming and all that. Yeah, he made money, but he looks freaking miserable.
Yeah.
His day job, he looks freaking miserable. Go ahead.
I like that dual life where he's kind of he's just working a normal desk job by day, and then he's a underground dark web hacker at night, and has the codename Neo, and he's hacking stuff. And so he knows the Matrix exists. He knows about Morpheus, and he kind of knows all of these little things, but he doesn't really know where it's going to lead. And when Trinity comes to him and tells him everything that he knows, she basically confirms everything that he knows is real, and that he should come with her and all this stuff. That's very interesting. But my favorite part of the series, and I think we brought it up, or at least you brought it up in the Top 10 Villains episode, where Agent Smith as this unstoppable force, duality of Neo as well, where he's kind of, throughout the series, he's kind of the opposite version of him. He's the best part. He's probably the best villain of all time. He is so powerful. And especially where he maintains the essence or the illusion of the Matrix as hard as possible. He always calls Neo Mr. Anderson or Thomas Anderson, essentially using his slave name and not his real name, Neo. Because he refuses to accept the fact that you're Neo. You are Thomas Anderson, this guy who is this number on this cell of batteries in the machine.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. So Smith, excluding the fourth movie, and we'll get to that, Smith calls him Neo twice in the trilogy. Mm-hmm. Once is the interrogation room, where he only refers to him as Neo because he's reading the dossier on
him. You're using the hacker alias Neo,
Neo. And then he says it again one more time in the third movie right before the fight turns on him. Mm-hmm. And that's not even technically him saying it, so it still doesn't fully count. It's just his voice. But yeah, I love the duality of Smith and Neo, and I think it's great right out of the gate when you meet Smith, their first interaction together. Mm-hmm. They work perfect as the yin and yang, yin and yang, where both they kind of have to feed off of each other in order to progress through the world. Mm-hmm. Neither are going to make it very far without the other one there, which I think is a very cool, interesting thing. Every great hero and supervillain combo have always had to have that kind of dynamic where you wouldn't quite be you if it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And it works great with these two. I love Agent Smith. I think he is one of the most intimidating villains. Mm-hmm. Watching that first Matrix, the whole time, you're just, dude, this guy, I would not ever want to be in a room with this dude. I just wouldn't want to be near him.
Yeah.
Like, ever.
Right. He's so scary. And the way Hugo Weaving plays him, the way he talks in that cadence is iconic. It's amazing.
And it's constant, like, you feel uncomfortable while he's monologuing, and he monologues like crazy.
Yeah.
His whole idea of, like, inevitability, which kind of hits differently in these days now, where you're like, oh my God, you brought it up earlier with, like, our pursuit of AI. Like, no, there's a bad inevitability that's coming our way. You should probably knock this crap off. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. The monologues and the ideas, everybody remembers The Matrix as an action movie and a complex sci-fi movie, but the ideas for real life is kind of like where I spend the most time.
Oh yeah.
And Agent Smith has another monologue when he's talking to Morpheus right after they capture Morpheus.
Dude, his monologue to Morpheus is off the chart. Oh my God.
He talks about the first Matrix that they made and how they made it to be a perfect utopia, but people's minds rejected it because we need that, like, struggle. We need that, like, that difficulty in life. If it's too good, then we're like, this isn't real. This sucks. And but so they needed to make the world pretty shitty for people to actually believe that it was a real experience.
Yeah, because we have to. How does he word it? It's man, like, we have to be controlled in order to be happy.
Yeah,
very. Like, you watch it in 1999, you watch it throughout the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and you're like, yeah. You watch it post 2020, and you're like, oh my God. You're like,
yeah,
like, it's almost painful because it's, like, true.
Yeah. There's so many, like, feelings in this movie that are relatable, and that's a big one. There's a lot of different ones. One of the ones that I always gravitate to, going back to when Neo goes to see the Oracle, and he talks to that kid about the spoon, and the kid tells him that there is, like, just remember that there is no spoon. And it's always interesting. I'm always interested in how Neo must be feeling, being told he's the one by Morpheus, by all these people, but then walking into that place with all these other kids who are way more advanced than he is, have all these abilities, and I'm sure that he can't help but feel like he's way behind. And he's like, if I am going to be the one, I'm like, that kid should be the one. He already is bending spoons. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And I think that
girl's making blocks float around. What
that's so relatable as, like, an audience, where I'm like, I want to do these things. I should do these things, but I'm way behind. And so why even bother?
Yeah. Yeah. There is no spoon. Man, that line is just so cool to me. It's so simple, but I love the idea. And if you even past, like, Neo using that as kind of his tool as a reminder of what he's actually capable of, you know, with the whole lobby scene, him going in to rescue Morpheus. But almost like a life lesson.
Yeah.
You could use it in the idea of, like, I can do this. I am capable of this. That obstacle that I have convinced myself is in my way actually isn't in my way.
All of the obstacles preventing you from achieving what you want are in your mind. They're you holding yourself back where you could free your mind and achieve them.
Yeah, and you know, so the last couple of years, personally, I mean, mental health is always a huge factor, but hey, I've had some rough patches the last 2 years. Rewatching The Matrix and going through that journey with Neo during that first one, and there is no spoon, and what you just said of, like, hey, you're creating all this shit in your own mind. It ends up becoming a very powerful kind of tool where you're like, okay, there has to be a breakthrough. I need to just jump. I need to make that jump. I need to be able to break through. I need to be able to do this because ultimately, I can. I've built this world around myself, or this world has kind of influenced what I've built around me to convince me I'm not able to do this, or I can't achieve this. And so it's the Matrix has so many layers to me of like, just not only is it such a badass movie, but putting the lessons of the Matrix or utilizing aspects of the Matrix in your own life can be crazy reaffirming. It can be crazy, like, uplifting and just kind of, okay. You know, listening to the Oracle talk, you're like, oh shit, is she talking to me?
Yeah, and it's so hard. Like, this cuts to the basis of what it means to be a human being so perfectly. It's I think everybody watches this movie and wants to believe. Like, they walk up to the ledge with Neo and they're like, I want to believe I can jump to the other side. I can fall and not die. I can fly. I can break the rules if I believe hard enough. But there's always that doubt in the back of your mind where you're like, I've lived this entire life with all of these rules. I know what they are. What if I'm wrong? All of these things. And so it always holds you back because you believe what you feel like you should believe.
It's so crazy. Like, and I honestly, so I have never, full confession, I have never looked into an interview with the cast, with the directors, writers, anyone, of what exactly does this movie mean? Like, what were their exact intentions? I have purposely made it a point not to look at it, because I feel like the Matrix is something that's so subjective to each of us. Like, you can take what you want from it. You and I tend to be on pretty much the same page, obviously, with what we're talking about. To me, I'm like, this movie is so important to me because of, I need to be able to free my mind. You know, Morpheus kind of represents like every parent out there of, hey, I believe wholeheartedly in you. Nothing will change that belief system. I might have moments of being kind of disappointed in you, but ultimately my feelings towards you, my belief in you never falters. No matter what, like, no matter what kind of pain I put myself through, the parent will always be there to sacrifice themselves for the child. More like, a lot of this was just flooding on me when I was rewatching. I was like, oh my God, Morpheus is like my mom and dad. Oh my God. Like, I'm Morpheus now with my own child, where you're trying to instill huge, life lessons, meaningful teachings into your own children. While at the same time, like, kind of being forced to remember, like, your child has to ultimately learn on their own.
And you can give them everything that you can think of to let them become what they could be, but it's always up to them to choose to accept that or not.
And this is, long story short, I mean, this is why Neo and the Matrix, especially that first movie, are the best hero's journey interpretation. It's such a powerful film to me that, it's a crazy, awesome sci-fi action movie. But to me, it's so much more in depth than that. It's so much more in depth than just what it's kind of spawned with, like the we live in a simulation computer world. I don't follow that. I follow the idea of, like, essentially we are all Neo. We just have to actually be able to free our minds. Like, and Zion represents that ultimate freedom. But it's not a freedom that you're just given. You have to actually fight to maintain it. Oh my God. The philosophies and metaphors of this fucking franchise are incredible. Well, at least especially the first movie. I feel like the sequels really decide to segue away from the deep, powerful philosophies and life lessons, and they go straight for, like, well, let's just tell a cool sci-fi flick.
They make choices about where it should go, and the part of the greatness about the first movie is they leave it open and they just introduce fascinating, powerful ideas, and then let the audience take and do with it whatever you want.
It's crazy. I genuinely love the franchise. But it's a franchise that, as much as I love the whole story, I enjoyed 2 and 3, but I can't help but feel like it's so unnecessary. Mm-hmm. I didn't need a second and third part. I didn't need a fourth part. Mm-hmm. Because that first one, and you just said it really well, of like, even though it's open-ended, it feels poignant. Mm-hmm. It feels like, yes, it's open-ended because now I have to go.
Yeah.
I've been given the tools. Now I have to go and apply those tools to my life, my world.
Yeah.
I still like the sequels a lot, but they're like the unnecessary sequels.
Right. Yeah, they're certainly not necessary. I think you get the gist of the whole story in the first one. Like you said, they tell you how it's going to end. So you could you could never see the other ones and assume how it would go, or even make up how you would want it to go. And it does such a great job, not just talking about all of these interesting ideas and philosophies, but also the struggle between destiny and choice is a big deal in the Matrix. And especially on Morpheus's part, you talked about it. He believes 1,000%, 1,000,000,000%, as much as possible. There's no doubt in Morpheus that Neo's the one. This is what's going to happen. No one's going to change my mind, to the point of being crazy, being fanatical. Nobody's like, okay, it's not that certain. Let's be real, like something.
Right.
But he believes 100%, and it's kind of disarming in a way where you're like, oh, this is destiny. It has to happen. And I think it helps the characters believe more. Yeah. But there's always that conflict between destiny and choice, where is it going to happen because it was supposed to happen, or is it going to happen because we made it happen along the way? There were so many times we almost didn't. Yeah. And that part alone is fascinating.
Yeah. I just seeing the Lawrence Fishburne. Now, I had never really known who he was until I saw him as Morpheus. Since then, I have obviously become a pretty big Lawrence Fishburne fan, or at least a decent fan of his.
Yeah.
So Lawrence Fishburne, to me, throws down such an incredible performance with his whole, nothing's going to change my mind, my belief system in Neo being the one to save us, to end the war.
Yeah.
Free, keep Zion safe, free humanity. When Neo gets shot and you see Morpheus, my favorite shot, one of my favorite parts of this whole sequence is the Sentinels are tearing into the Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, it is just chaos. You've got all the sparks, everyone's screaming. They're the end is there, and Morpheus is still. He's just staring at Neo in the chair, just like, I don't want to say disbelief, but just he is suddenly having a gut check moment of what do I do now? Mm-hmm. What will change? Will something change? You can see it all in his eyes and just all in how his composure is in that scene. I love seeing that. Now, all the philosophy and all that done. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about how fucking cool some of these action scenes are before we move into the second one.
This movie, as I was rewatching it, has one of the best climaxes of all time. Like, the whole last act is basically non-stop action.
Dude!
And story reveal and all these other things, but it's so
Excuse me.
So satisfying throughout the whole ending. Basically from the point where Neo says, we need guns. And they go into the Matrix and get that whoosh of rifles and trench coats and all this stuff. And then the lobby shootout is probably the most iconic, amazing.
Dude, that lobby shootout is insane. Just absolutely insane.
And the style is so different. I rewatching it, I was like, this could not come out today. It holds up so well. But it holds up being from 1999.
Yeah.
You couldn't put out a movie and have it be taken seriously, I don't think, doing that today. It's so different. And I don't know. It's so cool.
It's so cool. And you feel, I mean, so I would actually argue you on the turning point of the movie. I would say from the moment they leave the Oracle, when Neo talks with her for the first time, from that moment, because that's when the phone call has been traced, Cypher has given them up. You see the glitch in the Matrix with the cat. Yeah. I would say that is actually the turning point of the film, where it is non-stop after that. Yeah, there's still like some dialogue-driven like moments, but that's all they are just quick moments. It is very like, oh no, we are moving. Because suddenly it is desperation mode where Neo, he still doesn't think he's the one or believe himself to be the one, but he hits that point of like, damn it, Morpheus just made a huge life decision. I can't live, like, I have to save him. I have to give him a different option. Like, I gotta do something.
He has that, like, hero choice where he's still pretty confident he's not the one, but he's not gonna do nothing. He needs to do anything he can and try his hardest to at least save these people he knows. The last people on Earth, basically.
Seriously. And then you get, like, all right, never done a hack like this, but what do you need? And yeah, you get the famous guns, lots of guns. And you're just like, I remember sitting in that theater when he said that, and you saw the code write out, and then all the rows come flying past them, and just being like, what? And then, walking into the lobby, you got that song that starts to play, which just amps you up. And you're like, I remember when I watched it with my daughter, I told her, okay, now remember, all the security guards, they are not actually people. They are programs, okay? They are not... She was like, okay. When they start shooting that lobby up, I was like, man, when I was a kid watching that movie, I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. They're doing freaking cartwheels off the side of the building or off the walls. They are like doing flips and the little like, how many guns can you have strapped to you and you're still carrying a bomb? What the hell?
If we talk about influential action movies, before that, it was very common to have one guy with two guns shoot up that entire place. But the Matrix was like, no, you have a limited amount of guns and bullets and ammunition and magazines. You need to carry in all of that shit with you. And so it showed every little piece, and it was so satisfying.
I to this day, I love and appreciate how instead of them like worrying and focusing so much on, oh, now I got to reload, it is like you fire it until it's empty, drop it, and move on. To the point where they even pick up like the assault rifles that the security guards are holding. They, they rely on the martial arts skills that they've got. I love that final kick that Neo does, where he like walks up the guy's chest, boots him in the side of the head, and lands. The way that is shot, the way they use the slow-mo on that with the gun like falling to the ground. Oh my god, it's so cool. You're just like, oh. Fun little thing. So, when they pick up the bomb, they go into the elevator, and they have that shot of the lobby where everything's shot up and that the slab falls off. The slab was not actually meant to fall off. That was something that happened. And it fits so well in the scene that the Wichowskis were like, yeah, we're going to keep that. And I'm so happy they did, because I think it's the perfect, like, little period on that sequence. Like, yep, that happened.
It grounds you in, like, that environment so perfectly.
Oh, my God, it's so cool. It's so cool. And then, you got them going up in the elevator. They climb up. They put the latch on the cables. A lot of people miss the part where he says there is no spoon. A lot of people don't realize he repeats the line, and I love that he repeats it right there. I love that moment and the fact that they brought back the spoon talk. Considering time-wise,
we're going to do something crazy, and we need to start believing that it's possible.
Right. Dude, that explosion, oh my God. So I was telling my daughter how they filmed it, because she was like, is that a real fire? It was like, the fire was real, the door was not. It was like, the way they filmed it was like a miniature set, and I got to talk to her and tell her about like how productions will build miniature sets to achieve certain things, and if they do it well enough, you as the viewer will never know that it was a miniature. Well, this was a miniature, and they blew something, they blew it up, and they just pulled the camera back so that the fire followed. Well, and she was like, holy cow. It's like, I know, it's so cool how you can do this. There's tons of I love that my child has really started getting into, like, I just want to know the production. Tell me all the fun little ways that they film this. Every movie we watch now, she's like, okay, Dad, you have to tell me all the fun facts about it. And I'm like, okay, I'll try.
Yeah. And it makes such a better story than like, oh, they just, that's digital fire. That's not real fire. And that just kind of takes the magic away to be like, no, that's real fucking fire. That they shut off a real fucking explosion. And then they pulled the camera back super fast, and it's so hard to do. And they did it.
Yeah. And you can only do it a couple times at most, because you're going to run out of explosives. So I love the movie magic and all that. And the Matrix is full of this. Seriously, folks, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube or whatever. Look up The Matrix Revisited. The whole making of is just so mind-blowing. It's just as badass as the movie itself. But yeah, then we get the infamous scene, which to this day, how could it not be one of the coolest things you've ever seen in a movie, where Neo dodges bullets for the first time?
Yeah.
It is.
And it's such a great callback to the beginning, where Neo's like, I can dodge bullets, and Morpheus is like, no, I'm saying when you realize everything I'm telling you, you won't have to dodge bullets.
Yeah.
And then we get to him actually like stopping them in midair. But dodging them is pretty cool on its own.
Dude, dodging them was to this day, it's still just like, I get giddy when it happens. Yeah. And when I watch it with my daughter, I look over at her, and her eyes are just like wide and huge. And I'm like, yeah. Just like, how did they do that, Dad? And I'm like, he was on cables and they just lowered him. It's like, oh my God. But I told her how they set up like all the cameras for it, how it was not like just a linear circle. It's like all like, yeah.
The swoop around it is all a bunch of different cameras shooting at different places.
I love that he still gets hit. And she's like, how'd you do that? I've never seen someone do that or move that fast. That wasn't an agent. And he's like, well, clearly it's not fast enough. I love that. I feel like that doesn't get enough credit for being like such a well-placed comedic line. Yeah.
And it's still that little bit of pessimism. He's just not ready to believe it.
Yeah. But dude, Morpheus's rescue.
Yeah. The helicopter scene. The minigun firing through
the
windows.
Oh my, like goosebumps every time when he flies down and Neo's standing there with the minigun aimed, and Smith has that one line of just no. You're like, yeah. Oh my God, Morpheus breaking the handcuffs. You get all the slow-mo, the agents getting shot up. You get the bullet time with this.
Yeah. Oh and there's like water everywhere because this fire sprinklers have gone off.
Yeah,
and so
thanks to the explosion that they set off.
Slowly through the water splashes. And then the best part is when Morpheus leaps, believing. He doesn't hesitate, but Neo goes, he's not going to make it, and he has to leap out to grab him. It's just like the best.
Them flying over Edge City, and Neo's holding on to him. Dude, okay. There is something about this shot, that down-looking shot of Neo holding on to Morpheus as they're flying over the building, and when Morpheus gives him the go-ahead to, like, drop him.
Yeah.
I think every viewer of this scene has a borderline anxiety attack, because you're like, oh my God, that has to be so perfectly timed of a drop to drop Morpheus on top of a building as he rolls.
Yeah.
You're like, don't go over the edge, dude.
Momentum.
But the helicopter, okay. Trinity going down with the helicopter. You got Neo wrapping the cable, and you're like, you're not going to hold back a helicopter. What the hell?
You start to wonder. I wonder. I'm like, is he going to stop a helicopter? Like, is he going to hold it like Captain America? What's going to happen? And then, he pulls her out of it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's fine. It's not a big deal.
But controls the impact. Yeah. This is one of the wildest moments in the Matrix of the helicopter crashing into the building, and instead of exploding immediately, it does that ripple effect and then blows out.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Is there a cooler screenshot?
That scene, I remember when Blu-ray first came out, and like the Matrix on Blu-ray was the thing that they showed in Best Buys around the world for years. Just this scene, just the ripple of the helicopter blowing up and rippling the glass. That's all you need in Blu-ray. They're like, this is why you need movies in Blu-ray. Perfect selling point.
Yeah. Oh, you want high def? Just watch The Matrix on Blu-ray. Just go ahead.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is okay. I get it. I get it. But they have that calming moment. Morpheus challenges Trinity of like, are you beginning to believe now, Trinity? Or like, do you believe me now? And she's already kind of been invested into it. I think she's been having her own kind of like doubting. Not just that Neo is the one, but just like, I think Trinity is a character that quietly and very subtly is like really challenged the whole time.
I totally agree. I had a similar thought, and I'm glad that you led to this, where Trinity is such a fascinating character, where she's the opening of the movie. She does all these awesome superhuman things. And her most interesting fact is that she's been told by the Oracle that she's going to fall in love with the One, and she has to go through her own kind of journey.
Yep.
And so she has a very personal kind of interest and hesitancy to believing Neo is the one, because if he is, she's going to have to fall in love with him. She can't just fall in love with everybody. Everybody does. She's told is the one. But she kind of is very quietly in the background, watching, observing, trying to decide if she believes or not. And Morpheus challenges her on that, like you said. And so I think to people who aren't paying attention to her, it's kind of quick and sudden how quickly she does fall in love with Neo, or at least at the end where they kiss and she's like, she tells him she loves him. And I'm like, whoa, already? How do you love him already? But I think she's been watching and she's been thinking and she's been calculated. She knows that she does love him. She knows that he's the one before he even does. And I think that's why the love story part of the Matrix, which is a big part of the Matrix.
It's a huge part of the Matrix.
I think that's partly why it works so well, is because they are great together. They complement each other. She helps him believe he's the one. Him being the one doesn't take anything away from her. They're just such a great complementary partnership.
Yeah. I've never felt like the love story aspect felt really out of place. When I saw it, when it first came out as a kid, you just expect every action movie to have a love interest in it. Yeah. And so that first time you watch me, you're like, oh yeah, all right. That's formula. As I grow older, it makes more sense throughout the movie, especially for Trinity. And because they tell, there's so much dialogue in that first Matrix that people either didn't hear or just didn't pay attention to. But the movie starts off with like Neo is trying to find Morpheus. Like you said, he's had this hunch. He's heard of the Matrix. He knows things are happening that he doesn't understand yet. But Trinity has been watching him and following him. She knows.
Trinity calls Morpheus. She knows about him. She knows he's the one.
Yeah, like she's been watching in the shadows, and then subtly in the background, she's focusing. She's really like kind of at this. Am I just liking this guy because Morpheus believes he's the one? Do I believe he's the one? but she's been following him for so long that she's going to gravitate towards him. She's going to feel connected. And I like how quiet and subtle and if you're not really focusing on her, you're going to think that her professing her love for him is out of the blue, when really it's like, no, she's finally hit a point of like, I started following you because I was told, hey, you might be the one, but I truly believe you're the one.
Yeah.
And you're like, I genuinely have developed very strong feelings. So obviously she's in love with him.
Yeah. And she has her own conflict of choice versus destiny, where is she in love with him because she's supposed to love him, or is she in love with him because she chooses to love him? It's also kind of a chicken and egg problem where
it is.
Does he become the one because I'm in love with him, or am I in love with him because he's the one? And
which I am so glad you brought that up.
Because she's like, I might just choose to love him. He might not be the one, but maybe her loving him makes him become the one.
And I am a big proponent behind that. I think her believing not just in him being the one, but her believing in love in general is what actually gives him that life. And it's kind of a powerful thing because love, I mean, as a species, we do seek out love.
Yeah.
We kind of need love. And when we have love, we feel empowered. We feel like we can conquer stuff. We can achieve stuff. We feel important. Like there's value, meaning. And so I think the Wichowskis use that kind of basic human thing and decided, you know what if love could be used almost like a rule bender? Yeah. Or the rule breaker, because she resurrects him.
Yeah, they have a Snow White moment where he's dead and she basically kisses him in real life, brings him back to life in real life and in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And I do think that love is such a uniquely human construct that is so outside of the realms of the Matrix. I think that it's the kind of thing that a machine or an AI would be like, that is illogical, that's impractical. It's uniquely human and emotional on a way that is bending of machines or Matrix.
Yeah, and it's the driving tool or weapon really throughout the rest of the franchise is love. You got Smith that mocks it because he has no understanding of it. The architect mocks it because he has no understanding of it. Really the only program that is like on board with it is the Oracle. Yeah. But dude, that foot chase where Neo is trying to get to the phone so that he can get out of the Matrix. His fight in the subway with Smith is so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Oh my god. We could probably spend 2 hours just talking about their fight in the subway, so we'll try to keep it down.
Yeah.
Because it is full of so many little, like, quick moments. My personal favorite is when Smith catches Neo's hit and he pokes him in the throat.
Yeah.
But you get you hear that, Mr. Anderson, that's the sound of your doom, that's the sound of inevitability, and Neo finally has that, the name is Neo. I don't take that as him fully believing he's the one. I take that as him being my real life is not this. Yeah. This is not where I end. This is not my inevitable conclusion. Not now. You know?
Yeah. And just rejecting of his authority over him. That I'm not Thomas Anderson, this slave to the machine system. I am more than this. I am who I want to be, at least.
Dude, first time I watched The Matrix, when he finally makes it to the phone, which it's in the same building that the whole movie, the whole franchise kicks off from. In fact, it's the same room. It concludes in the same room that the whole thing starts in. First time you saw it, when Neo kicked open the door and you saw Smith standing there,
Yeah.
were you like, I mean, for me, I had never really watched a movie where the hero took it in the end up to this point.
Yeah.
But when Neo gets shot and they do that great, like, where you see the gun flash, you kind of hear it go off, and Neo has that, like, huh? Mm-hmm. Were you, I mean, we were both the same age, but were you like, oh no, like freaking out?
Absolutely. I don't think that I had seen a movie where like the hero dies, especially one that had been built up this much. It's like, if you were to like say, okay, this kid in Kansas, his name's Clark Kent. He grows up to be Superman. He's the coolest guy ever. Oh, but he dies at the very end, and then actually nothing really happens. And you're like, whoa, what? Like, I've never seen a movie like that. And then, so, I was very shocked that happened, and you hate Agent Smith so much that you don't want him to win so badly. And so you are in your chair willing Neo to get up, just like Trinity and Morpheus on the Nebuchadnezzar, willing him with everything they have.
Come on, Neo, you gotta bounce back from this. And then he empties the clip into it, and you're like, no! Of course, then we get the kiss, you got the Sentinel. Dude, the amount of, like, elevation of just insanity at the end is... Man, I can't believe that movie didn't put people into anxiety attacks.
Yeah, and all of the Sentinel stuff is so crazy. And actually, that whole real world stuff we didn't really talk about, but the real world side where these machines have these people in goo, like fields of goo, like stealing their energy. As
we're like fields of corn being plucked.
Exactly.
At a time.
They're harvesting human beings for their energy. Some humans have escaped and are on a pirate ship in the sewers, and I always just assume because they're in a ship and they're in the sewers, they must be underwater. And so I have to think differently where I'm like, they're not underwater. They can open up the ship and it's fine, but they're Sentinels. They're these crazy machines who are going to rip them apart.
And they look like squids, and they're even called squiddies. So,
so it's such a different, cool style that I haven't seen before. I don't think I've seen since. And I just have to think about it in a different way.
Yeah, so when Neo, the real world stuff. So I purposely haven't brought up the real world stuff. I'm kind of saving that for when we get to Revolutions, because that's prominent real world stuff. Well, so is Reloaded, but the real world, I love the design of it, but I'm going to save a lot of mine about it for later. So Neo comes back to life, and I love how Smith and the other two agents are like kind of scared. Yeah. Because wouldn't you be?
Yeah.
But I love that Smith goes charging right in for the first time looking very desperate, which I love that we get to see a program being desperate to maintain control. But the best part is Neo hitting that potential of when you're ready, you won't have to dodge bullets. Dude, him whispering no. And the way that they I love the shot of the bullets coming towards him and the how they slow way down.
Yeah.
I think that's such an incredible shot. Just him plucking the bullet out of the air and dropping it, and you see all the others fall with it. I love that sequence so much. It just looks so good. Yeah. And you, as the audience member, well, I can't say you or generally, for me, as the viewer, I remember him stopping the bullets like that. I personally felt just like a surge of, oh my God. Yeah. If he can do that, I want to be Neo. What can I do? What else can he do? This is insane. And I was 12. I think I was 12 years old when I saw it, 12, 13 years old when I saw it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the testament of the Matrix, is that kind of impact it can have, and clearly it's had on me. It's had on you. Neo becoming the one at the end of the first Matrix is so cool. before we go to Reloaded, though, how great, how relevant, poignant, just everything important is his call to the machines at the end. I should have written it down. Do you have his dialogue? I feel like
I don't, but I bet I can grab it because I have Wikipedia open. Actually, right here, last lines. I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how it's going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this.
I know!
I'm going to show them a world without you, a world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries, a world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
Dude!
And then he flies away like fucking Superman.
And he flies away like fucking Superman. But honestly...
Yeah.
You said it. You got goosebumps. I got goosebumps. And we can't even deliver it as well as Keanu Reeves delivers that monologue. But
I ran through it.
Honestly, that dialogue is probably... Like, I've always loved it, but there was something so powerful of hearing it again these days, of just being like, oh, man, how great is this? And not to go down any, like... non-movie cycle or whatever, but dude, I feel we as like a species need to revisit the Matrix, and we need to like really take heed of that final monologue of just what are we able to do. Let's show each other this whole world without, like what Neo says, without borders, without these guidelines, without these rules. And obviously I'm not saying like, hey, let's go anarchy. I'm saying we got to get out of our own fucking way. We got to get out of our own head.
Right.
And I just, oh my God, I love that final monologue. And that, honestly, I mean, him flying away and them ending the credits with Rage Against the Machine's Wake Up is just so like, yep. All right, I need to do something.
Yeah. So much of the story of the character is, and of the story in general, but also the character of Agent Smith. He's just predicated on the idea of authority. He's used to people being asleep, being totally fine with authority. He can take over as many programs as he wants. Doesn't really matter. He's all powerful. But one person standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to take this. You can't control me. And it throws everything off. It makes him doubt himself. And so everything we talked about. And so the Matrix, like so much great literature, so much great film and storytelling, is about people rejecting this authority over them just because it's authority. Like you are being told that this thing is in charge and you're just accepting it. But you don't have to, especially if it's damaging you, or you could take care of yourself better. And so that's kind of the main story of Neo saying, these people need to know you can wake up, you can take care of yourself. Where they go from there, I'm not responsible. I'm not going to control them like you control them, but that's just the first step. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, I love, like, I mean, you can take it any and every which way. I take it very like personal and to myself of like, we've kind of been conditioned to only accept and believe certain levels of our potential. And to me, Neo's monologue of like, we're going to break this is very poignant to like, okay, these walls or whatever, this whole conditioning that I've accepted and kind of reinforced myself,
right? Like
through self-doubt and through all this outside influence on human potential. Like, it's time to break that. Right. But he sums it up great of like, I can't like force people to do this. I don't know what will happen if people choose, or when people choose to finally kind of rid themselves of these conditionings, of these rules that they've kind of put in place. But that it's all choice.
Yeah.
Like, there might be destiny, there might be fate, but ultimately you still have the choice to follow through with that. You can still change the course of actions pretty much no matter what. I love that first Matrix. Dude, it's such a powerful movie to me.
Just like it's a choice for them to free themselves, it's a choice for them to stay in that mindset of dormancy or slavery. We see people breaking the Matrix throughout history every day, when people have generations of actual slavery, or when people just have generations of poverty and they're the first one to go to college. Like, they're the first one to buy their own house. They're the first one to have like kids. Like, not obviously not the first one to have kids. Everybody's kids, but you know what I'm saying. There's so many people who just choose to do something differently, breaking the conditioning, breaking the pattern of everything that came before. And that's their Matrix in a way.
It's so cool. Oh my God. It's so powerful. It's so good. Dude, we're like 2 hours in and we only talked about the first movie.
That's okay. That's the one I have the most to say about. Honestly,
yeah, me too.
The best.
I mean, honestly, like, I asked my daughter if she wanted to watch a sequel. She said no, but that was because she doesn't want her brain to be put through the ringer anymore. And I did tell her about.
It's worse from there.
I know. I was like, oh, but you got to hear the architect talk. No one knows what the hell he says. But yeah, that first Matrix is just so powerful. It's so good and relevant and important in my mind, whether you're a film fan or just if you're looking for some philosophy. I think the Matrix is something that will still be getting dissected, even 20 years from now. Yeah. I think people are constantly going to be referring back to it and constantly trying to kind of remind themselves of so many like personal revelations and all this stuff. But that first one is just, it's too good. It's too good.
Yeah. There's so many lines of dialogue that I feel like you can get more and more out of it the more you watch it. Especially Morpheus tells Neo so much stuff about humanity and philosophy and ideas that it blows your mind. And so you kind of need to just break it down and have the wisdom of age and time and other references that it means more later on in life, I think.
And that will probably conclude the most philosophical part of this whole episode, because at this point is, to me, where the franchise became just kind of a money grab. And they kind of separated themselves from the philosophy of it and just focused solely on the crazy story and the action and sci-fi aspect.
Yeah, it's confusing because I feel like I get the first one enough to fully understand it and respect it. The other ones, I'm like, I don't know if I don't get it because it's arbitrarily complex, or because I'm just not enlightened, or I'm too retarded to know what it means. And so I watched it and I'm like, I feel like there are so many lines of dialogue. So like in Matrix Reloaded, early on, I think it's early on, in the park, they're having a discussion with the Oracle, and it's all very complicated and convoluted. But you learn that they need to go meet the Merovingian in order to find the keymaker, and apparently the Merovingian writes code that makes cake give this woman an orgasm and stuff. And so it's
which is the most okay. Reloaded. I'm a fan of Reloaded. I think it's got awesome like action set pieces. I like the story, because Reloaded is where the machines are instead of just searching for Zion or trying to get to Zion, they're on the attack now. They're officially on their way to destroy Zion.
Yeah. That's the weird thing about the first movie. There's so much in it as far as ideas and actions that you forget the actual story of the movie is the machines are trying to get these codes to get to access Zion.
Yeah.
These codes that are like locking them out of Zion.
Because they don't want people to be free. They want to continue to solely operate off of harvesting and growing human beings.
Yeah.
So like Reloaded is, hey, now we're in desperation mode because the Sentinels know exactly where Zion is and they are tunneling.
Yeah.
Like they are on the offensive. They are close. Mm-hmm. A lot of crazy shit happens in the second one. You got Smith comes back, but he's no longer, like, he's still a program, but he's not plugged in. He's unplugged. Now he acts more of like an actual computer virus.
Yeah. I liked the earpieces that the agents had where they know everything that's going on in the Matrix. They are jacked in. They can hear and sense everything going on. And then, in Reloaded, Smith loses the earplug. He is now a rogue program that's not connected or part of the main system anymore.
Yeah. And although he's still a program, he's still out to destroy Neo. Mm-hmm. He's very corrupting, and he will corrupt like the world that the machines have already created, and that's a problem for the machine world.
And he can change any program in the Matrix into a copy of himself. Yeah, is kind of the main thing in Reloaded, and so he has this like extra power. I guess because Neo dove into him and obliterated him in the first one.
Yep. Yeah. Kind of like accidentally. Well, so the Merovingian really becomes kind of the guy who's explaining every action has a reaction, what comes with, cause and effect. He babbles on a lot about it, but essentially it's him telling Neo, everything you've done up to now is going to have a consequence, whether you understand why or understand the consequence. It's happening no matter what. And that happens. But Reloaded, I like how you worded it, where it takes like this already very complicated, huge story and decides, you know what would be a good idea? Let's add on top of it. Like suddenly there's all these added characters that just feel kind of an overload of like, there's never been a hint to a keymaster. There's never been a hint to like, I guess you're expected to assume that there would be an architect, like who actually created the Matrix or what created the Matrix. The Oracle ends up being a program, which you're already supposed to assume she is a program. But then we've got Seraph, who may have been an agent at some point or something. So the problem with the sequels is there are a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean it is like you cannot list the amount of hints to what they were doing beforehand or who they actually are that never, ever get mentioned again. They never get hinted at again. They're said and you move on.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like,
it's confusing.
The architect has a line to Neo where he's like, if I'm technically the father of the Matrix, then she would be the mother of it. And the assumption is like, oh, is that the Oracle being the mother of the Matrix? But if she's the mother of the Matrix, then what the hell is she doing? Like, yeah, that's a bad relationship to have. But they,
it means that they made it together. The Matrix is their baby, and so she had as much to contribute in the ideas or reasons for the Matrix,
which would make her a part of the problem. That means she is still. That means she is not leaving up destiny. She's not leaving up choice, because if she's the mother of it, then she has willingly created this world to enslave people, and she's only having the one as a means of trolling the architect.
Yeah, I think
just
you're meant
an
to,
annoyance.
I think you're meant to think that she regrets contributing to creating it, but then you learn that there have been 6 matrices. This is the way it goes. This is what it's for. It's a process that always happens, and
right, which means that she is continuing to do it. So I think it takes away the integrity of the Oracle if that's the path that you go down. Now, like I said, I've never looked up what the Wichowskis have said is the full meaning or the actual meanings of all these. So, and I don't want to. To this day, I don't.
And it's said so quickly that it could mean several different things. It depends on how much you believe him, all this stuff.
Yeah. But we do get a lot of cool things in Reloaded. I mean, it gets kind of intense. The final act gets very convoluted. You got Smith ends up jacking himself into the real world, but in the body of like another dude.
Yeah.
Which is still one of the weirdest sequences I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, that's like the very end that leads right into the next movie.
But they hint to vampires and werewolves actually existing, but they're programs in the Matrix, so they're in the Merovingians' like hangout spot. You brought up the Merovingian is writing sexy codes for
this lady, it's the weirdest scene, honestly, where he writes this program or code for this cake and it gives this woman an orgasm, but there's this like green matrix code as she spreads her legs open and the camera zooms in.
We watched it happen.
Vagine. Yeah,
we watch it happen.
You see the orgasm inside of her programming or code. It's weird.
It's so weird, and it's kind of off-putting, honestly.
Yeah,
but
and it's while he's like telling you all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what the purpose.
You have no clue what he said because you're so distracted with the cake.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, his wife is Monica Bellucci, and she kind of moves the story forward. So maybe that was the only point of him because she helps them.
To this day, I expected way more from the character of Persephone. Mm-hmm. She does nothing really except like she makes out
moves
with
the
Neo
plot forward. Yeah,
and then she kind of she's a plot piece, and
she
that's
gets him out of a tight spot. Is all.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer because I think her character could have been better used or have more potential. I mean, when they cast her, when like the talk of we're getting Persephone, who
mm-hmm.
In my mind I thought, she's going to be huge. I remember having conversations with my brother after we saw the second one. We saw it separately. He was back in Minnesota. But I remember we saw Reloaded, and both of us were just going off with all these fan theories of where we thought these characters were going to go. Because when they did the release of Reloaded and Revolutions, it was like maybe a month, maybe 3 months tops in between the two. They were very close.
They came out the same year, which is insane.
And Revolutions had a lot of hype behind it because of where Reloaded left off, where all the hints that it set up, all the plot points that it set up, and it never delivered anything on any of them, which sometimes having unanswered questions is okay.
Sure, definitely. Like, I would have been fine with the first Matrix leaving everything it leaves open.
Yeah, it would have been perfect on its own. That's why I say the sequels, although I enjoy the sequels, are unnecessary. But but yeah, Reloaded I think the Wachowskis got too caught up in maybe trying to create or show too much of the Matrix in one shot, and then didn't deliver. I think they got a little ahead of themselves. I think they tripped themselves up with a lot of it and didn't follow through with a lot of it. Whereas, so a good example of how this is done well would be the John Wick series. You and I have talked about this pretty much at length, where they do a great job of widening the world, showing you more of this whole assassin's world society, but they do it in such a great way. Even as you're meeting new characters, new hierarchies, It's understandable. You get it. It keeps you intrigued. It keeps you in the story, and it never takes away anything from the story. Whereas
it doesn't
Reloaded,
go from 0 to 100 all at once.
Whereas Reloaded and Revolutions get so caught up in just trying to show you as much as possible.
Yeah.
On top of all these crazy action sequences that I think at some point they went, oh crap, we forgot to tell the story. So how do we force the story to fit all of this shit?
Right. Yeah, they're trying to tell a much more complicated story, introducing the Keymaker and the Merovingian and the Architect, and having these very long, very complicated conversations, and then also have the biggest fight you can imagine in the park between all these Agent Smiths and Neo, have the giant highway fight with these dreadlock guys on these trucks, and it's just the craziest. It's a crazy movie. I think it's kind of too much on some level. A lot of the reason the Matrix works so well is because it was pretty grounded. There were feelings that people understood that resonated with them. Even though they didn't understand everything that they were talking about, they understood the gist, and they understood the feeling of that. They had references in real life. They had references in history and all that stuff. So then to suddenly take that and be like, to talk about, and the dialogue between the Architect, especially, kind of jumping to the end, the Architect's monologue is it's more complicated than it needs to be. Like, I think he could give the same ideas in a much simpler way. He's kind of an asshole just in the way he talks. He uses weird words that are not normal, and so it throws you off on following that.
I have always joked from the first time I saw it, even to now, like, you almost have to watch that Architect scene with a dictionary and the pause button ready. Like, he said, what? Okay, look that word up. What does that mean? Like,
I would be interested in rewriting it with a thesaurus to be like, okay, what's the simpler version of that word I could use instead?
I've always felt like they wanted the Architect to come across as, like, obviously the ultimate machine. He's the Architect. He's the one who has created the world. He's created the code. He's created the control. So I feel like they wanted to make sure he was set completely apart from humans, so he's going to talk like a machine would, so using all these crazy words.
Yeah.
And I get that, but at the same time, since they're showing the Architect show annoyance, you would almost think that he would be kind of tired of, all right, this is the sixth one, and we're going according to plan, so I guess I got to start getting number 7 ready. Yeah. Like, they've already established the Architect can get frustrated. The Architect is going to feel human emotions. He even gets really sarcastic a couple times with Neo.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, is this a flaw? Or is this like on purpose? Because if he's a machine, he probably shouldn't really be feeling too much. But I've always kind of wished that we would have seen the Architect again. I think a final showdown between Neo, or not even a showdown, but like a confrontation between Neo and the Architect would have been awesome. Yeah, we never get that, but the Architect flat out tells you.
It made sense for him to be like at the source or something.
Yeah, but even when Neo's like, "I hope we never meet again," he's like, "You won't." And you know what? He didn't lie. We never see the Architect's gone. Yeah.
But it is an interesting idea that everything in the real world even is part of the system.
Yeah.
Where whenever they reset it, of the 6 times this has happened, they've had to reset it. They always choose a handful of people to kind of start Zion, start this idea that they kind of, I think it goes back to the first movie where human beings need that struggle, need that motivation, need to feel like they're striving for something, that they're the underdogs fighting against the man or whatever. That is even architected. That is even part of the design of the Matrix.
Yeah, the machines know, the Architect knows, because he says, like, hey, the first one, like you said earlier, is the perfect utopia. We thought it was everything human beings wanted, and it turns out they rejected it. Because we're fucked in the head. We literally cannot accept just purity. We just can't do it. We have to have conflict. So I think it's an interesting thing that the architect tells him, like, yeah, we are the ones that actually set up Zion. We're the ones that actually kind of start the fight against ourselves, but it's only to placate human nature. Like, I think that's an interesting point. Reloaded gets so fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And it does it pretty rapidly. I mean, it starts off with like the meeting of the captains and their vessels in the Matrix, trying to discuss, the Osiris getting blown up, which is the Animatrix. And then wanting to like, hey, we're going to have to go back to Zion because we're getting called back. Morpheus is hanging back because they need to see the Oracle again. And Morpheus is just kind of like, you find out in Reloaded. I think Reloaded really diminishes a lot of key roles. I think it kind of take away the importance and kind of the relevance of a lot of key people, Morpheus being one of them. He's essentially comes across in Reloaded as like delusional religious man who's rebellious.
Yeah.
And is caught up in a love triangle. That's the love triangle that I feel is so unnecessary to the story. Is him, Niobe, and the captain. Or the general. I don't like that love triangle. I just don't. I think it's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
But I do like seeing Zion, and I really like how organic it is, where like the material feels homemade, everything feels homegrown, everything is just man-made.
Yeah.
Like, we have to rely on ourselves, which is not entirely true, because even the head of the council tells Neo, like, we still rely on machines to keep us going. Look at the system we've built. I do like that irony. And I do think Reloaded, as convoluted as it gets, and a lot of its flaws, I forgive them in Reloaded primarily because there's still a lot of really good things to take from it. They still discuss, like, hey, we can fight this battle forever, but ultimately humans are always going to be dependent on something. We're never going to be fully independent and be able to actually thrive by ourselves. We have to depend on other stuff to help us out. We just have to find a healthy level of dependency. And I think that's a really cool thing, especially for Neo to kind of learn. Because when we see them again, he's been the one for, what do they say in it? It's like a year or something like that.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. It's not right after.
But, all of Zion is treating him as the savior. They're giving him offerings, which he is clearly uncomfortable about. I would be.
And I think, largely because he was involved in rescuing them and pulling them out of the Matrix.
You meet the kid that he freed, who just kind of like accidentally got freed. That Neo hints at. I've always wished they did something more with him. I think that would have been cool to see him kind of get a ship of his own or become a part of an actual crew instead of just being there to celebrate Zion being saved. Especially after you find out in Matrix 4 kind of the fate of Zion and all that. But we're going to get to that because I have shit to say about that.
Well, I guess his main hero moment is when Zion is getting attacked by all of the squids. He is like running out ammunition and stuff, and he helps. But
I've always wished that I got to see that character get to achieve something, because he tells Neo, like, hey, I want to be a crew member, I want to be on the Nebuchadnezzar. Obviously that can't happen, but I've always wished I could have seen him take over a crew. And going into the fourth one, I had hopes of like, will we get to see him again? Because I feel like they focus on him so much, and then they don't follow through with him. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but back to Reloaded. I do like Zion. I love the real world stuff in Zion, where you see more of the sewer systems that that humans have to navigate and be really cautious about, because suddenly Sentinels in the machine world are hyper aware. And then we get to learn, like every sequel does, the machines have new weapons, they have new tools, they have upgrades.
Yeah.
Which, okay, the upgraded agents, I don't know what it is. The agents in the first Matrix, all of them, you just look at them and they're intimidating. They're not super built, they're not super bulky, they just have a look to them that you're like, you're bad. Like, you understand that very first scene with them, which is just them getting out of a car, they're the bad guys. Every agent from then on, from Reloaded, Revolutions, and Resurrections, every agent, I'm like, none of you look intimidating. You all look like you're trying too hard.
Big whoop, yeah.
Just my opinion.
I wonder if part of that could be narrative driven, because before you were introduced to them, or I think maybe right after you're introduced to them in the first movie, Trinity and that group, they talk about how nobody's ever survived an encounter with an agent.
Yeah.
Like, you can't kill them, you can't even escape them, they are an unstoppable force. And so then you see Neo do it, and you're like, oh, well, we can do that now. That's fine. Right. And then everybody suddenly is able to do it, and they just kind of lose that scariness.
Yeah. And that could be Neo calls them upgrades. Yeah. Kind of like sarcastically, which I do like that. Like that. The Reloaded just, they do a lot of things in it that I feel come so close to fulfilling so many things and then retreating at the very last second. Yeah. Neo's first fight with the upgraded agents starts off so cool, and it just abruptly comes to an end. Like, it just, okay, we're done. And I've always felt like that fight was cut short, or so it's always felt a little off to me. The Burly Brawl is so cool. I love the Burly Brawl, except for the fact that it is like the first time that we are really put off by the CGI, and you're kind of taken out of what you're getting to watch because it looks not good.
Yeah. The fighting doesn't look good. Neo flying doesn't really look good. There's a lot of fake fire in this movie. And a lot of the reason that I fail to love it is the digital effects take me out of it for sure. I feel like there's a big plot hole in the conversation with the architect where they describe the whole process of the 6 different resets that they've had, and they need Neo to kind of fall in line and do his part and all this stuff. And if he doesn't, then everyone on the planet, inside and outside the Matrix, are going to die. And then Neo's like, well, doesn't the machines rely on human beings for power? And the architect's just like, we'll figure it out. No, you won't. Like, how are you
his line of like, we are prepared for other methods of survival. You're like, no, you're not.
Yeah, that sounds like bullshit to me, and a gap, but whatever. And then the main thing is that it kind of retreads a lot of the original movie plot points, where somebody is a prisoner they need to rescue. Trinity dies instead of Neo, and he kisses her to bring her back to life. And it's just kind of, I saw this movie already, kind of.
Right. Well, and then it does a lot of the same sequel tropes, and it does it in the same way. Instead of trying to do like a new spin to it, it does it the same way. where we're introduced to same characters, but suddenly they have like either new abilities or new weapons. They're upgrade. Everyone is upgraded suddenly, and never really for a good reason. I think they do a weird thing with Neo in the same scene. It's when he resurrects Trinity. So she's shot and dying. And he uses his Matrixy skills to like reach in, literally pull the weapon out or the bullet out and throw it off to the side. And you're like, okay, he was able to dive into Agent Smith. Okay. But then he restarts her heart by reaching in and like shocking her heart again. Yeah. And that's just weird.
Yeah. Well, the whole concept of the Matrix is if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life because your brain doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Your brain is tricked into thinking that you are actually hurt that badly. So I guess it's conceivable that he could trick her mind back into thinking that she's fine through his Matrixy powers. But it is a little bit... we're bordering on the edge of believability here.
It's one of those moments, even for like, yes, he is in the Matrix, this simulation world where he is not bound by rules here. He can do whatever, which is what you are supposed to use as your believability. But even with that, him restarting her heart the way he does is still very like, I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of them utilizing like the code look. I don't, they do it with the lady and the cake. They do it with Neo saving Trinity, and they do it one or two other times. I just can't remember when.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily like how it looks, and I don't think it was necessary to do that, but I don't know. Man, for me saying like, no, I really like the second one. I'm sure I have a laundry list of stuff I don't care about.
Yeah. I mean, it's enjoyable on a basic level, but it falls so short of... The first one is not on a basic level. The first one is on a metaphysical level where you can't even quantify it.
Yeah, the second one, positives in the second one, like, I think when you strip away all of the unnecessary complexities of it and you stick down to the basic of Neo learning a truth, or a truth, if you will, and following through with what his character has already shown him to do, which is rebel and reject that rule, that boundary. And, he uses love as his driving force, which is perfectly in line with his character. But him really, I think, Reloaded is at its core, Neo really deciding to believe in himself as being the one, or like actually considering, am I really this prophecy? Am I really the guy that's supposed to do this?
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool storyline. I think the action choreography, like the fight scenes, are awesome. I really like the fight scenes. That highway chase scene is still one of the coolest fucking sequences ever, minus the really bad CGI at the very end of it. But it's fast paced. I love the fight in the car. I love the fights on top of the semi truck. I think Neo's fight in the big mansion foyer, whatever, with all the crazy programs, I think that's a cool fight. I think the movie, though, gets a little too caught up in itself with Neo's ability to fly. He seems to fly all the time and at just random moments. And I'm just always like, can we just don't worry about the flying. We already know he can fly. Save it for when it's crazy relevant to the story.
Right.
Him flying to go see the Oracle, I don't think that was necessary.
Yeah, it's don't forget, He flew at the end of the last one.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like, oh yeah, don't forget, Neo can fly. Like,
Yeah.
Trust me, I did not forget that Neo can fly.
Right.
But no, Reloaded, like, I do enjoy it. I like his conversation with the Oracle where he calls her out on being a program, and he flat out tells her, I don't know that I can trust you. And she's like, you know what? That's a good thing. Maybe you shouldn't. I do like that. I do like, for the most part, I like his scene with the architect, minus all the crazy huge words. I like finding out that there's been, 5 previous versions. It's the 6th one.
Yeah.
And I do really like when Neo goes through the door.
Mm-hmm.
And the speed that he flies at, I love the shot of it. It looks really cool with him bringing like the fire and all that with him. It looks cool.
Bringing up the different times this has happened, that kind of changes the stakes for Neo, where I think to this point he has thought, I could be the one to save humanity.
Yeah.
But they completely flipped the script where that doesn't mean anything. Being the one to save humanity has happened 1 million times or 6 times. And so why bother is kind of the question, where even if you wanted to, and even if you did, does it even matter? And so you kind of lose motivation in a different way, not because you don't believe anymore, but because it's inevitable, like Agent Smith said, and it's that destiny thing.
And I like that Neo is still like rebelling against that, and I think that's what really ends up tapping him into his full power arsenal. I think so. When Reloaded got released, everyone knew, because they announced like, "Hey, we're going to get Reloaded," and then a couple months later, we're getting the conclusion with Revolutions. And so everyone went into Reloaded knowing and expecting the cliffhanger, right? Mm-hmm. We all figured like they're going to end it at a crazy time. It's the oddest cliffhanger moment.
Yeah. Nobody thought it would be this random guy we've never seen before being in a coma right next to Neo,
who's also in a coma.
And but this guy is secretly Agent Smith is trying to kill him. Nobody saw that coming.
No. Instead, and I still think the better choice would have been, so the whole like leading up to the architect, trying to keep the Keymaster alive and safe so that he can open up this back hallway, entryway to get to the architect. They do that whole meeting sequence in the building where the whole plan is coming together, it's falling apart, and then like Trinity has to go in last second. You got Morpheus's monologue of like the importance of believing, and hey, whether we believe in the prophecy, whether Neo is the one, tonight will be a defining moment for us as a species. So what happens tonight is important regardless of what we believe or not.
Yeah, we're still all in this together.
Yeah. And just the importance of like life and taking risks. And I think Morpheus's monologue is really the only moment in Reloaded where you get that sense, kind of like you did in the first one, where you're like, oh, okay, we're back to something grounded, something human. Like, this is the moment. Morpheus is flat out telling us there are things to believe in and they are worth fighting for. And he's challenging us because he's sitting in the chair, and the scene is set up where he's talking to the other captains, but the camera is like focusing on him, so it looks like he's talking to you. I still say that would have been the best place to put that cliffhanger, is right after he says, wouldn't that be worth fighting for? Blink! To be concluded. It would have pissed so many audiences off, but at the same time, because at that moment, the Keymaster is finally opening the door. Neo is finally going through the doorway. You get all the bright light. That would have been the moment to be like, and cliffhanger. Yeah.
Instead, what you got was everybody being like, what? What's happening? Who's this guy?
Instead, we get the huge dialogue with the architect. You got Neo going in to save Trinity. You've got the reminder, like, oh yeah, Smith is possessing this guy in the real world.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. I think introducing the idea of the architect in the second one would be good, but then to also have them make it to him and hear all this stuff, too much. It would have been better in the third one to be
yeah.
Like, and if he had done it like at the source or something, like he had made it, he thought he had done it all, and they're like, guess what? Doesn't matter. We've done it 6 times already. And so then you kind of have that immediate moment of, do I bother continuing, or does it matter anymore?
Yeah, I think had
Crisis
they
of faith
kind of edited it the two differently, where like the architect, kicking the third one off with Neo being challenged so much so at the source with the architect of like, why do I bother then, or should I bother then? It would have, I think, been a better fit for his journey, and kind of made his decision in the third one to continue and to fulfill like what he is now believing.
Yeah,
I think that would have been more important.
In the third one, he gets the closest to believing he's the one.
Yeah.
And that is that idea that it doesn't matter if you're the one, because we're going to reset the system anyway, like we have 6 times before. That is a strong blow to, and can cause a crisis of faith in a significant way later in the game, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, the second one, like I still enjoy it. I remember when it came out, my friends and I went and saw it, and I dressed up as Neo and went to the theater to go see it. By the way, Reloaded came out like early summer, late spring, something like that. And I remember it was hot, and I was wearing black boots, black jeans, black shirt, and a freaking trench coat. Yeah. And it was hot. I remember being like, this was a stupid idea. But being excited to go and watch The Matrix. So, goofy kid back then. Goofy kid. I remember ditching school to go see The Matrix on like the first showing of the day. That's what my friends and I did. I still, as much as like I feel was faulted in Reloaded and how they tried to pile too much onto it, I still am a fan of it. I think solely because Morpheus in Zion, when he gives his like speech to Zion of like not being afraid of just confronting the problem, confronting your fear, and choosing to not let it control you. I think his speech is pretty cool. I think his monologue at the end is great. I do wish they would have not cheapened his character by kind of giving him that look of like a crazy religious old man. But there's still a lot in Reloaded that I can forgive and still enjoy the movie. So like when I watch the franchise, obviously I'm like full attention during the first one, I'm at full attention during the second one, and I'm at most attention during the third.
Okay. I was about to ask how you would rate them in relation to each other.
I would rate the whole franchise, honestly, in the exact order that they came out. Like, from favorite to least favorite.
Interesting. That's interesting. Actually, I saved a meme that I saw earlier this week that I'm going to post, which is very relevant to what you just said. So go to our Instagram to see that. But I feel personally, I think the second one is kind of a dip for me. I think I like the third one a little bit more than the second one.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
And I think there's a lot of little reasons for that. Some of it I think is movie making things. Like I have issues with like the CGI and the pacing and things of the second one more than I do in the third one.
Okay.
But the third one,
let's jump into Revolutions.
It kind of picks up right where the second one ended, where Neo's in that coma next to that guy who's a secret assassin trying to kill him, and Neo in the Matrix, because he's in this coma, he's kind of stuck in a purgatory middle ground between not really in the Matrix, kind of in the Matrix, and he's stuck between the human world and the machine world, which is basically purgatory. And it's ran by the train man, who is another new character.
Which is yet another new character that you're like, what?
With a funny name and a funny job, a specific name and a funny job. And this train man apparently works for the Merovingian. Mm-hmm. He's like a gross bum that runs the train station. I don't know why there's a train station taking people from between reality and the Matrix.
Well, he's not taking people, he's taking programs.
Sure. Mostly programs and Neo, apparently.
Yeah.
And you're introduced to this little Indian girl who becomes important later on and not really important in this movie.
No, but I do like Sati. I think she is very sweet. I think she serves a really good purpose, which is kind of funny to say considering as her program father is talking to Neo, he pretty much tells Neo, no, my daughter serves no purpose. That's why I'm like making a deal with the Merovingian so that she'll be safe and not exiled. Like, program thinking.
They give her a weird name too. Oh yeah, Agent Smith calls her the last exile.
Yeah,
and so I'm like, oh well, she's another character with a specific name. She's going to have a specific role, and then she didn't really do much besides hang out with the Oracle.
Yeah, she makes cookies with the Oracle, but she has a role in the fourth one.
Yes,
which I was happy about. I really was happy about that.
Yeah, but so the issues with the third one I have. They try to recreate the lobby scene from the first one, but it's just with Trinity and Morpheus and the Seraph. And but the best way they can think to make it different is the guys go upside down and go onto the ceiling.
Yeah, they run on the ceiling and have the shootout, but it fails.
Yeah,
so hard at just the magic or like just the excitement of that lobby shootout scene from the first one. But yeah, I remember watching that and being like, all right, they flip upside down. I feel like they'd be easily taken out, and they are.
Yeah. And I was like, if you thought this would make it cooler than the first one, it's not cooler. It's worse, actually.
Well, and then, so that scene, though, is another example of like them trying to hint at or introduce another character arc that they're never going to talk about more. They see Seraph coming through and they're like, oh shit, it's him. Oh man, I thought he was gone. And you're like, wait a minute, what is Seraph's background? You're never going to get it. In fact, after the third one, you're never going to hear about Seraph again.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well. The other weird thing, they changed the Oracle actress.
So they
use way too much exposition to explain the fact that they changed the Oracle actress.
Yeah, that was almost like them trying to just save face with the audience. Now, they changed actresses because the original Oracle passed away.
Okay.
So they had to still have the Oracle in the third movie because she's pretty important to Neo in the third movie. What kind of makes me shake my head, though, is like, yeah, they are blatantly like, yes, I look different. I had to change faces. I do this. Like,
they spend like way too long. Like a line, okay, but I would prefer to just not even acknowledge it. Just like, this is the Oracle. We all understand, but a line would be fine. But they spend a long damn time going like, I am the Oracle. Sometimes I do this. Sometimes I don't. I'll change the faces if I want to. So it means this sometimes. I'm like, shut up. Move on. What are you doing?
It's another choice that I'm trying to understand. Like, but you're the one that made it.
Yeah.
I think the only character that actually deserved her explanation of the change of face would have been Neo. Because once he has taken on the title of the One in Reloaded, their dynamic, their relationship is different than everybody else's relationship with the Oracle. Mm-hmm. He's the only one that they kind of hint at. He's the only one that revisits her.
Yeah.
Regularly.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even when Morpheus takes Neo to see her, Morpheus does not go in to see her. Morpheus waits outside for Neo. So you get that sense of like, once you've seen the Oracle, you don't see her again.
Right.
But
She's giving you
Neo,
everything you need.
yeah, but Neo visits her regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. So for Agent Smith to visit her, and I guess it's their first interaction that we've seen, they have all this whole conversation. And then Agent Smith tries to replicate himself in her like he's done with every other program. Seems to succeed, but things go a little bit crazy.
I mean, you just jumped like through the whole film and went right for it.
That's true. But, I mean,
That's fair.
So going back, the assassin that was in the coma next to Neo wakes up. They have this whole conversation, and it's very clear to the audience, even if you weren't paying attention, just based on the way he's talking, that this is Agent Smith. This guy in the real world is Agent Smith somehow. It takes Neo a little bit too long, I think, to realize that, because it's pretty obvious.
Well, especially so we kind of glossed over why Neo is in a coma, and it kind of actually is relevant to the third one. So it turns out that Neo has his powers that he has in the Matrix. They kind of transferred to the real world for him. And he's able to stop and disable the Sentinels at the very end of Reloaded.
Yeah.
And that
just
exertion...
with his hand, like the bullets.
Yeah, and that exertion of, like, Neo Force knocks his ass out. Jumping back into the third one.
No, that's extremely relevant because he has this interaction with this Agent Smith, whatever, avatar. And and they have this fight, and this Agent Smith avatar blinds Neo. He like electrocutes him in the eyeballs and burns him, and he can't see anymore. Except he has the Matrix sight, where he, in the real world, he can see this glowing, fiery Agent Smith figure.
Yeah, he ends up being able to see. It's not Matrix code anymore. It's just like think of like, okay, for comic book folk, for those not comic book folk, I'm sorry, Neo kind of goes Daredevil in Matrix Revolutions in the real world, where he's blind, but he's able to see based off of like his surroundings and the lights and the reflections and sounds and all that reverberate into him, where he can like bat radar almost superpower. He basically pulls a Daredevil, folks.
Yeah, but it seems to be based on his connection to the Matrix.
Yeah.
And so he has a connection to these machines and their programs and stuff in the real world, and he can see them even though he's blind. He doesn't have any actual vision. Yeah. So he can see Agent Smith as like this fiery figure in the darkness and realizes it's him and not the guy he was fighting. So that's kind of cool, but as complicated as it is.
I do like their fight. I think it's a high stakes fight. I think the playfulness of Agent Smith. Well, he's not Agent Smith anymore, so just Smith. Is still kind of in line with the character. I think Smith becomes a little too playful, and it kind of takes away from like the intimidation factor, the sinister factor of his. But it's not horrible. It just, to me, it kind of does that. One problem I have with their fight, though, is Neo is blinded. You know, he's like desperately trying to fight back, but he can't see. He's like swinging the pipe around kind of frantically a couple times. And then out of the blue, he's able to see Smith for who he really is, and then blows his head up when he takes the pipe to the head. But my issue with that is like they treat Neo's blindness kind of inconsistently. Yeah. So if he's suddenly able to, and when you see Smith through Neo's vision, I mean, it's not like subtle. It is prominent. It is like, oh no, that's him. It's almost detailed. He's just on fire.
Yeah. He's a bright orange burning figure that looks exactly like Smith. It's very clear.
Yeah. And you would assume after that, like, oh, Neo's sight is crazy cool and intense. Like you said, is attached to the machines through his time in the Matrix. So he's going to be able to like navigate and see everything, but he can't fly a ship.
Yeah, he needs Trinity to fly the ship for him, but he kind of navigates because he can see where the source is. He's like, hey, go over there. That's where we need to go.
Hey, hang it right here.
Yeah. And so, it's not the most clear, but it serves the plot.
It does serve the plot. I think it was a little inconsistent with it, but I'm basically nitpicking at that point.
Sure.
But I think one of the, I'm trying not to jump too far ahead, but Revolutions is just kind of like I feel like Revolutions was compiled because the Wichowskis were like, oh shit, we tried too much in the second movie. We have to conclude this story. Let's just pile everything into a 2-hour movie and hopefully end it.
Yeah.
That's how Revolutions kind of feels to me. Now, I forgive it a lot because I'm a big fan of the final fight scene, the whole fight sequence in the rain between Neo and Smith, even though I'm kind of critical about it at the very, very end with the CGI raindrop punch. But their fight is really cool. And honestly, let's face it, everyone went into Matrix Revolutions to watch Neo versus Smith for the final showdown. That was all the audience wanted. That's all the audience cared about was, no, we want to see Neo kick Smith's ass. Just give us that.
And I think it does pay off that. I think you get a really good fight out of it. I actually like the fighting in Revolutions more than I do in Reloaded. I think that there's some weird wiredness, things don't feel right. The force and gravity and inertia don't feel as good in Revolutions as they do in
Reloaded?
Reloaded. There's a lot of R words.
There's a lot of R's.
They don't feel as good or real in Reloaded as they do in Resurrection.
I'll give you that. I would agree with that.
Revolution.
Yeah. But I still I like Neo's kind of understanding in Revolutions of his journey is ending. Like, it's his time. It's time to end it. I like that he understands that. I like that when he takes time to meditate and kind of think about it. I actually really appreciate that about his character because it's almost like it's not that he's meditating on the choice or like, hey, I'm probably going to die. I like that it's really just him kind of preparing himself to say goodbye to essentially his family. I do like that. It feels very human where he's like, I need to make peace with what's about to happen. And I think everyone knows what's going to happen.
And he's kind of come far enough that he knows he's at the end.
Yeah.
He knows that the destiny that has been predicted for him is going to come true. He's believed it. He can believe it as much now as ever because he's kind of come over that hill and he knows we're getting to the source. We're definitely going to do it. But that means I have to die. Trinity has to die because that is part of the prophecy, basically.
Because they're one.
Yeah.
Like, they are a union. You don't get one without the other. You really don't.
Yeah, so during the process of going to the source, Trinity does die. She gets impaled on all that stuff.
Yeah, so before we get into her death scene, there's a couple things that I want to touch on before we get to that final sequence. One is because I have a lot to say about like her death and that whole the finality of the trilogy. But before that, I don't know why. So the actual attack on Zion, when the machines have officially drilled into the docking bay, and the Sentinels are coming in and they're fighting. I honestly, this is why I don't hate Revolutions, and it's because the stuff inside Zion, the actual like battle scenes, are fucking great. I love the attack on Zion. I think it's intense. It is brutal. You feel like you, as the audience member, you are like, there is no way out. Like, how do you destroy this many Sentinels?
Right. It does a great, I think the Matrix, all the Matrix movies, especially the last two, even though they are limited by the technology, I think they still do a good job of imagining and showing the scope or the scale of the threat.
Yeah.
And no, we didn't really see that again until maybe Two Towers. Yeah. And just getting that full understanding of how severe and significant and massive the amount of Sentinels up there. There's a Sentinel for every human being on Earth, and they're coming in.
And they're all coming into this one compound, which does not have every human on Earth.
Yeah.
I think the battle is really cool. I love the desperation mode that everyone's in with the machines and all that. I love the sequences of them having to reload. I think for as futuristic-y and machinery, you know, all this kind of stuff, the way they have to like stop the fight, the humans have to stop what they're doing to reload while they're still being attacked. It really kind of gives you like, or at least me, it kind of brought me back to like Civil War stories and, you know, that kind of stuff where you're like, you could be firing, but you have to stop to reload your weapon, and it's not an automatic reload.
Right.
And I kind of appreciate how they treated that. Like, yeah, they've got these giant robot machines that they have these massive machine guns in, but when they call reload, they're sitting ducks.
Yeah, and they have to rely on like the logistics of this system where they have these guys in this bay waiting to be called out with this pallet of ammunition that they need to wheel out there as quickly as possible. They don't have any guns. It's kind of like World War II when the Russians gave this one guy gets a gun, you get the ammo, and when that guy dies, you can have his gun. Yeah. And so you just are running around this war with ammo, and that's your job.
And you're just hoping that you're not the one that gets taken out. I really like, for as futuristic-y as that whole battle on Zion is, I like that I think they did a good job of giving that old school battle mentality in a futuristic world. I really appreciate. I think they did a good job with that. And I love how like the whole like attack on Zion is crazy because there's so many parts to it. You've got like the actual docking bay where they're doing the initial fighting. Like that's the what's the word? I can't think of the word. Anyways, that's the initial like first battle. You've got Niobe trying to just speed race into the bay while the ship she's flying is like being busted apart by Sentinels. She's limping.
They're trying to come through like the backdoor sewers and get there fast enough because all the ships have an EMP on them. Yeah, so that they can detonate it to wipe out the Sentinels. Hopefully,
they're hoping to at least be able to save the bay to get people to a safer spot. At least, if anything, delay just to buy some time. Like that's the idea.
Buy time for Trinity and Neo.
Yeah, who are taken off to the Machine City for Neo to fulfill the prophecy, essentially.
There's a couple of people running around with like bazookas who are trying to slow down the drills.
I love the homemade weapons that they've got. I love that they're calling on the what is the word, Jake?
I don't know what
starts with an I. They're not like the actual military. They're the
infantry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my god! I was like, what the fuck word is this? Yeah, like they're just the people called upon of, hey, we need, like, you're not military, you're not certified soldiers, but we need
like
someone else. Yeah, they're the militia.
Yeah.
I really like that. And that's kind of high stakes because they've got sentinels hunting down people, and if a sentinel catches wind of like one of your rockets or your bombs, they're going to come after you, which is very like, oh shit, these things can maneuver better than a human can. So you're kind of like high stakes.
Yeah, they're pretty terrifying.
And I love, so Niobe crashes through, they set the EMP on this huge surge, and you get that like peaceful shot of the sentinels falling. You got the celebration, and you as the audience are like, oh man, I can breathe now. And then you got the general going, are you kidding? If I was the machines, I'd be sending everything right now. And immediately you're like, oh my God, I would be sending the entire force. Like, they just disabled themselves. It's ours for the taking. Like, but there's a shot during the surge of sentinels where they're shooting at like that hole that's up in the ceiling, right? Yeah. And you've got all the sentinels flying through, and it's just massive amount of them. And then you get the like push, and it's just that flooding of sentinels. That shot, to this day, I'm still like, how do people, not more people, talk about at that moment how just like defeated you feel?
Yeah, because at first, when they first come through and everybody's ready, they're trained on that spot, and they start firing, and you feel like it's manageable. You're like, we can do this all day because we're shooting them as fast as they're coming through. And then, they just like gain ground, and they all come through, and you're like, no, we don't have this. We don't have this.
Oh, crap. Yeah, I've always felt like that shot has just been ignored and just not given enough credit because it's such an intense shot. Seeing that many sentinels flood in to the docking bay is just, it's disheartening. It really is. Even when I watch it these days, I'm still like, God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's overwhelming odds for sure.
Yeah, so then you've got the mass push from the Sentinels and the machines coming into Zion. You've got everyone in Zion. They no longer have the giant, I forget what they're called, but the giant robots that they've been using, that's gone. So now all they can rely on are the EMP guns. And there's not very many of them. And there's only a few people that can hold on to the guns. Now it's just desperation mode. We're going to die. I love this whole sequence. Like, I genuinely love. This is why I don't hate Revolutions, and it's solely because of the final act of the film. Yeah, because then you get Neo and Trinity, and here's where I'll go into her death scene. Them flying into the Machine City. Trinity has already told Neo, like, I understand we're gonna die, and I'm okay with that because, and it's kind of like the couple on Titanic, right? That are like in the bed together. She's like, I get that we're not coming back, but at least we're going to go out together, and at least we've experienced love. At least we get to be together. But there's that shot. So the machines are like firing on the Nebuchadnezzar, and Neo tells her, just go up. And it's such a great callback and reminder that humans scorched the sky. I mean, like, they have darkened everything because the sun helped give the machines, or at least it was thought, that the sun was providing power to the machines. And so when they go through the clouds, it is the very first time Trinity has ever seen the actual sky.
Right. And she's overwhelmed by how beautiful it is.
Yeah, she even just whispers, like, it's beautiful. Yeah. I really love that detail, and I love the timing of this part because it's not super drawn out. It's very like, you go up, she sees the sky for the first time, actual sunlight for the very first time on her skin, and immediately they go down. Yeah. And it's like she got to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's it for her. Because then they crash, and then I understood Trinity was going to die. I was sad to see Trinity go, because as a fan of this franchise, like, I was attached to Trinity. I will say she has like the world's longest death scene in the history of movies.
Yeah.
She has how many steel rods poking through her body?
Yeah.
And she monologues for like 6.5 minutes.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's a long time. And like they do that thing where you think, oh, she's gonna pass, and then she has that like even more to say. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah. Second and third wave.
That's my really only criticism with Trinity's death, but I absolutely love the quick second that she gets where she gets to see the sky for the first time ever. It really is. I mean, they did such a great job of making the sky like it looks so beautiful. It genuinely is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, especially compared to the crap that they live in.
I know. And then you got Neo going through the machine tunnel, and this is where I know the movie drew tons of criticism. I criticized it for this too. It goes very Wizard of Ozzy at this point.
Yeah.
And
yeah, with the like giant floating head guy.
Yeah, giant floating head guy. You got the weird machine creatures, which I was like, man, this just feels forced and weird.
Yeah.
Little did I know what was coming in Matrix Resurrections. I'm giving hints of like some opinions.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I love Neo just going up and just flat out saying, like, you need me to go and defeat Smith. I'm going to go do it, but you gotta lay off. Like, leave Zion alone. We're looking for peace. Leave us alone.
Right. Form a kind of a tentative truce.
Yeah.
The machines.
Like, we don't have to like each other, but you quit messing with us, we'll quit messing with you. Let's just...
Yeah.
And to me, it's not just Neo kind of fulfilling that prophecy, but it's almost like Neo is still acting out of rebellion against the architect and against kind of the plan.
Right.
Because he's still like, hey, I'm all right if I die. I understand that's what's going to happen, but let's just... Like, what if we didn't piss each other off?
Right. If his destiny was to just fight them forever and defeat them through force or violence, then if he doesn't completely succeed, then it's just going to keep continuing over and over and over.
Yeah.
But if he can make peace with them and get them to agree to some mutually beneficial arrangement, then he could try something new that's never been tried before and actually succeed as opposed to just fulfilling the cycle that's been happening.
Yeah. And obviously the machine agrees, plugs him into the Matrix one last time, and I do really like their fight. I love the setup. I love the fact that it takes place in rain. There's just something really cool about kung fu fights in the rain. It's just cool.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's like peanut butter and jelly.
And I love that Smith walks out, the real Smith walks out and says, like, I already know how this ends, so the rest of me is just going to sit back and watch. And you're like, oh, dang, one-on-one. Because I was a little afraid that we were going to get another poorly CGI'd Burly Brawl.
Yeah.
I had a fear. I'm glad that it didn't go that route.
Yeah, you expect, oh no, they have to try to one-up the last one and make it even larger.
Right.
And
but
I have to.
I like that they made it one-on-one. I don't mind the fights in the air. I think they're kind of cool. I do like the sonic booms when they hit each other.
I think they work honestly better than some other fights we've had in the air in other movies since then, like 10 years later.
Yeah, I agree with you. Obviously my favorite part of their fight is when they go in the building and they kind of recreate their subway fight a little bit. I'm okay with those member berries. I think, like, I like seeing Neo get shoved into the wall and it breaks in that circular motion behind it, or that pattern, I mean. I like the callback to Neo telling him to, bring it on.
Yeah.
Even even when Neo falls, it's still intense, and you get Smith getting cocky, which is his fault, because every time he has been overconfident, he has failed.
Right.
And I genuinely like that Neo just accepts, I'm going to beat Smith at his own game by letting Smith win?
Yeah.
Like, in a way?
Beat himself, kind of.
Yeah. Like, I can endure quite a bit, but I'm just going to let you exhaust yourself. It's like a boxing match.
Right. It's like Rocky.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not a great boxer, but I can let you beat me up until you're too tired to continue. And then I could just outlast you.
Yeah. That's all I've got. Like, I'll just exert a little more patience than you will. Of course, then you get the goofy line of the Oracle telling him the famous line of, like, everything that has a beginning has an end, and that wakes Neo up, and that's when he makes the choice of, like, oh, all right, here we go. Now, I like that Neo defeats Smith kind of the same way he did originally, only except this time it's on, like, a massive scale. I still find it a little... I don't know. I guess it's kind of like the he kills the it's like the like vampire or werewolf myth. If you kill the one that turned everyone, then all the rest that it's turned fall in line. Yeah, it still feels a little kind of like I said earlier, where it felt like they were feeling forced that they had to just end it.
Yeah, wrap it up.
Yeah. And that kind of bumps me out, but I like seeing the Smiths all get destroyed, but what I like the most of that whole sequence is seeing the Matrix reset.
Yeah.
I do really like that. I think it looks really cool when they do it.
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
But yeah, I mean, Revolution's like, I like the ending of it. I think one of the coolest shots of that movie is right after Neo has defeated Smith and the truce between the machine world and Zion goes into effect. I love the music that plays, kind of that like a choir or whatever kind of vocalization. And again, Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus throws down some, like, you just see it all in his face. He is validated. Right. Which is such a cool moment to see that Morpheus is like, he's not this crazy religious old man. Like, he is validated. The dude that he has put all of his faith and belief in just, like, did it.
Right. Yeah.
And I love that you get Niobe officially believing in Neo and thanking Neo. You've got the dude that he saved who's so ecstatic he runs and tells Zion we're saved, the war's over, Neo did it. I love like the celebration and that giant sigh of relief. Because it really does. I mean, the final act of Revolutions is so chaotic and so high stakes that, like, when you finally get to breathe during it, it's very, like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it pays off big time where you definitely didn't feel like you were going to make it. And so when you do, it's very fulfilling.
It's fulfilling. I love the end of Revolutions. I really do. I love the whole reset. I love the celebration. You're heartbroken at the same time, though, because Morpheus understands at the moment of truce, like, he knows the moment Neo and Trinity die, basically.
Right. Yeah. It's bittersweet because you are very excited you are not about to die, but it means you've lost your two best friends. Basically.
Right. Well, and Trinity, I mean, Morpheus is kind of a father figure to Trinity, which I have always, and to this day, still say a big criticism I have of Revolutions. Morpheus and Trinity never said goodbye.
Yeah.
I feel kind of robbed because I feel like if anyone was going to say goodbye to each other, it was going to be Trinity saying goodbye to Morpheus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He was probably more of a father figure to her than he was even to Neo.
Yeah,
based on time together.
Yeah, because he served more of like kind of the mentor to Neo, kind of like the wise old man, if you will.
Right.
But I do love just that whole. I love the bittersweetness of it, and you just see it all over Morpheus's face. And I do, like I said, and then you get the reset of the Matrix. And I guess this is the last time we ever see the architect of him walking up to the Oracle. You get Satie showing back up, and she's apparently her purpose is painting the skies now. I guess that's her programming, which you're like, oh, okay, so she has a purpose. What happened to her parents?
Yeah.
And then you get that like open-ended where the architect is like, do you really think this piece will last? And Oracle's like, well, it'll last for as long as it needs to. And you're like, okay.
That's not really satisfying.
we're hinting to more shit. Come on now. Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of that kind of hint, but I love the hint of Satie asking the Oracle, do you think we'll ever see Neo again? And she goes, I don't know, but I believe. And she's like, that's it. And I do like the final song, that like giant like choral. I'm not going to recreate it, folks, but I love that. I really like the final song to it. I think Revolutions ended the trilogy well. I think it ended Neo's story well.
Yeah.
Even if like there's a lot in Revolutions that I could have done without. I mean, we skipped like the whole movie just to talk about the best part, but that's okay because that's the relevant part.
But did you feel like it left anything unanswered that you needed answers for?
I mean, everything like the architect hinted at, all of their little character hints, I think would have been cool to see maybe more of or have fulfilled. Like, I still want to know what Seraph's role was before he started guarding the Oracle. And since when does the Oracle need a guard? She never had one in the first movie.
Right.
I kind of wish we could have seen more or learned more about the council in Zion. How were those people chosen? What are their what's their actual purpose? I think that would have been kind of neat, especially because I love the conversation between the head of the council and Neo, and I always wish like there could have been a little more to that, because that was when it felt like we're trying to stay grounded, we're trying to bring it back. I think I don't like the train man. I'm not a big Merovingian fan. I think he's just kind of obnoxious.
Yeah.
And he's super obnoxious in his one scene in Revolutions where I was like, I don't care about you. But I do still wish Persephone would have been used better instead of just sitting off to the side being like, oh, she's in love. She'll kill us all if she has to. She's in love. I feel like them rescuing Neo happened really fast. For as like impossible of the stakes as they made it seem, they should get him back with like hardly any issue at all.
Yeah, they just kind of like let him in. They're like, oh, there he is. Just go do that. Okay.
Yeah. I do think when Trinity and Neo see each other again for the first time, when she gets off of the train, they hug.
Yeah.
Is it me, or does it just feel odd?
Like this, the style or the CG almost.
Yeah, I don't
know if it's the lighting or what, but
I feel like if the love of my life was put into a coma and I was told that the stakes of getting him back or getting her back, whatever, were impossible to the point of almost having to die. When you saw your significant other again, wouldn't you like not only just hug them, but wouldn't you like embrace them completely, like a big old obnoxious kiss almost, and like happy tears almost, just like, hey, we weren't going to see each other again. Instead, we get like just this weird like crescendo moment, and then a little hug, and then it's like, okay, we're moving on.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does feel a little lighter than the stakes led on.
Yeah.
Sure.
I also think it would have been. I think there is a big loss of potentially learning more about the Matrix itself, or maybe some other characters, had Neo been stuck in the train station longer.
Yeah.
And encountering more programs. You know, maybe they should have made the third one for Trinity's storyline of having a fight to get Neo back, and then being told of the choice of like being, you know, hey, Neo's going to have to die.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been interesting to see her go through that journey of fighting to get Neo back, only to understand like she's going to lose him again.
Yeah. Yeah. Neo doesn't really learn any big significant lessons or revelations during his time in purgatory. Right. He doesn't meet anybody other than the couple of people we already talked about. And so it's not like I'm reminded of I don't remember which Harry Potter it is, but towards the end when they're in that like big white room with the train station and stuff, and you learn a lot of interesting, significant things in that like secret, or not secret, but like in between world metaverse thing, and that you don't really have that. It's not, doesn't seem to be a huge significant point of him being in that, other than he's in a coma just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, like for some reason he's trapped in this like machine purgatory. Yeah, but he's going to get out in 10 minutes, so don't worry too much about it. I've always kind of felt like there should have been more meat to that point of the story.
Yeah, or gravity or something.
But in terms of like an overall, I think Revolutions ended it well enough. Yeah. I enjoy it well enough. I never felt the need for a fourth film. I felt like Neo's story was said and done, and I liked knowing he still wins.
Yeah.
I like that. I like thinking Neo gave the finger to the architect and won by just calling a truce.
It's a very classic hero move, and a classic, I guess, messianic move to sacrifice yourself for everybody else, fulfill the prophecy and all that stuff. I think that their deaths, both of their deaths, are so meaningful that my main takeaway is to undo that and for them to be resurrected. And unless it's not like resurrecting Jesus, where that's like the focus of the story. Right. And the reason like that actual like death was more important than the resurrection was in the Matrix.
Yeah. I always felt like I was fulfilled as a fan, even though the sequels were not nearly as like inspiring or impactful on my personal life like that first one, but I felt fulfilled as a fan. I really do.
Yeah.
Like, and I know it's an unpopular opinion to say, like, I don't hate 2 and 3. I have a lot of criticisms of them, but I don't hate them. I actually enjoy them. And especially like when it comes to the third one, which is the unanimously hated one, I'm like, man, but everything in Zion makes up for everything that the movie lacks. That makes Revolutions a good movie to me.
And I enjoy them, almost all of the movies in the real world. And I think how they do the real world is really interesting.
Yeah.
And the battles are all cool and stuff.
And then they announced the fourth one, and I'm not going to lie, I was excited for it. I was like, hey, I get to see Keanu Reeves come back as Neo. I don't know how they're going to do that, because he's dead. According to Keanu Reeves, when he got the call about it, his reaction was that too, of like, I'm dead. I don't know how I'm going to come back.
Yeah, I was interested, at least at minimum. I was interested because I enjoy Keanu Reeves so much as Neo. I enjoy Carrie-Anne Moss's Trinity.
Yeah.
So to have them is obviously a selling point. You wouldn't have it if you didn't have them.
Yeah,
I really loved though Morpheus and Smith, and so to not have Lawrence Fishburne and
Hugo Weaving.
What the fuck? Hugo Weaving, thank you. To not have them, I was like a little bit nervous about that. Not because I don't like the replacement actors, but just because those characters are so perfect, and I kind of knew the odds were stacked against them. I love Jonathan Groff, especially in Mindhunter, but it's so different, and it's so not what you would think you were going to get when you talk about Agent Smith.
I did not like the replacement actors.
I didn't either. I don't like. I don't know that I've seen a movie where I'm like, I really like. What's his name? How do you say? Yahya Abdul Mateen II as Morpheus, the guy from Candyman.
Yep.
And
he played Black Manta in Aquaman.
Yes, he was decent. I liked him in Aquaman. There was something else he was in lately, though. But yeah, I don't love him, and I don't like the new take of Morpheus. Morpheus was quite a bit different. It's not like he was just embodying Morpheus. He kind of transformed Morpheus into something else.
Yeah. So, Matrix 4. Okay, when I went and saw it in the theater, I mean, dude, I picked the earliest show time. I wore my Matrix shirt. I made sure to get home from work at a decent time, get to bed, get some good sleep. I got up extra early to drink my coffee. I was stoked because I was like, I get my, like, one of my all-time favorite characters. I've got everything that I heard leading up to it. I was not that hesitant, even minus Lawrence Fishburne and minus Hugo Weaving. I was just excited because I wanted to know how are they going to bring Neo and Trinity back. And in my brain, I was like, oh shit, they're going to be programs now. They're a part of the system now. Like officially, this is going to be crazy. They're going to be like Smith. Neo's going to have to be essentially like Smith, where he's going to have to find a way to unplug from the system and become like himself again. It's like, this is going to be amazing. This guy, oh my God. I was so excited for it. I was really curious about Neil Patrick Harris. And then I went and saw it. And immediately, like, opening scene where they're trying to recreate the opening scene of the first Matrix. Immediately, dude, I was like, uh-oh.
You know what my thought was? My thought was, this feels like The Force Awakens. This feels exactly like doing The Force Awakens again.
And I mean, they point out like, hey, I feel like we've seen this story before. Yeah, but this is different. Like, something's off about it. And I was like, oh, no. Like, I'm okay with things being meta. But it did not take me long to just be like, oh, no. They went overboard with the meta. Turning the whole Matrix franchise into a video game, which is actually just Thomas Anderson or Neo's memories of this previous life. I hated that. I hated the conversation of them. What does the Matrix mean? Bullet time. The amount of meta, I was like...
They joke about bullet time a lot, which was weird.
Yeah.
I didn't hate the idea of taking the events of the first three movies of Neo's life and turning it into the part of the collective consciousness of the system that, of course, you remember that. Everybody remembers that. It was such a huge phenomenon. Your video game trilogy was such a huge phenomenon. Everybody knows all of the story and the beats. So that's why you remember it in your bones. I thought that was interesting. I thought that video games were interesting, although I was surprised there was no VR, nothing really modern about video games. It's not like VR or the metaverse of like Facebook or social media. Nothing actual modern was in the movie. Yeah. Which was weird, I thought.
I thought it was interesting that Neo's going to the therapist, and the therapist is trying to like convince him, hey, the stuff that you think you're seeing, it's not happening. I thought that was interesting. Mm-hmm. But oh my God, I was cringing in my seat when the guy who's the new Morpheus shows up as an agent. And at first I was like, oh shit, what a spin. Like, Morpheus has been turned into a program. This is crazy that they're going this route. Oh, damn. And then you find out, no, he's the video game avatar version of Morpheus, but he's a little different. And I know this is a stupid detail to fixate on, but his wardrobe choices throughout the movie gave me a headache, because I was like, at no point would Morpheus wear this shit, and at no point would Neo program Morpheus to wear this shit.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I said he changed Morpheus so much to be different, and it didn't feel like he was embodying the character of Morpheus. Because Morpheus wears a burgundy suit jacket one time as he's in the Matrix, getting him out of the Matrix. That's about it. And so you took that into, he's a very flashy, snazzy dresser.
And it's like, no, he's not.
Yeah. No way, Jose.
He's not at all. But like, I kept telling myself that first viewing of like, okay, you probably came into this with too many fan theories, with too high, way too much hype. Let's just watch the movie for what it is. So I obviously I finished it in the theater. I left that movie though, and I was like, man. And I was like, okay, maybe it just didn't hit you because I had just watched Spider-Man twice and then went and saw The Matrix. So I was like, maybe your love and excitement for Spider-Man, maybe that's just too much.
Like, you needed a palate cleanser in between.
Yeah, I was thinking like maybe I needed to do that. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to focus on the stuff that bothered me, which there was a lot. Fucking machine friend, like, stop turning machine things into friendly, humorous, whatever. I don't care about it. It's not cute to me. The only time it has really worked great was Wall-E, and he wasn't a side note. He's the main fucking character. I was like, I hated the little machine buddies in the new ship. Hated them.
We're friends with them now. It's symbiotic.
Oh my god. There was so many cringe moments in this. I don't think the cast worked well together either.
Yeah, there were a lot of times when the like main girl who is at the very beginning and gets her out, she has the blue hair and stuff. She was likable enough, but I just was never connected to her in any real way. Yeah. And then she had that weird, the guy who was essentially Cypher, he was outside the Matrix, or Tank or whoever, he was outside the Matrix running the program, but he would like pop in as like a visible heads up.
Yeah, I did not like that at all.
That was weird.
It was so weird.
What did you think of the like whole conversation about with his boss, who ends up being Smith? He's like, Warner Brothers has contacted us, and we need to make a fourth Matrix, and it was all extremely meta. Yeah, and the name of the video game company is Deus Ex Machina, which was kind of funny, but not actually that severe. And so it was extremely self-referential, extremely meta, extremely member berries throughout the whole thing.
Like I said, I think Lana Wachowski got way too caught up in being as meta as possible. I think it tripped up the writing. I think it tripped up the story. Now, there's a lot of really interesting moments in the movie that they never flesh out that I think would have made the story work better. Primarily being Thomas Anderson is suicidal now.
Yeah.
He has attempted to take his own life, and he's in therapy because of that.
Right.
I really wish they would have fleshed out that kind of storyline of like, so when he was apparently rebuilt, which is a weird thing.
Yeah.
But like when he was reinserted and resurrected and put back into the Matrix with this new architect, I really wish we could have seen more of Neo's kind of fall. Like, how do you go from saving machines and humans, get rebooted into the system, and because of that, you know something's wrong, you know something's off? Because they hint at that, of like, you've been trying to do this, we've seen you do this, and I saw you leap off a building, but you looked like someone else, which there was a lot I was like, what are they doing? But
yeah.
It felt like, you know what, all the like, here's what he actually looks like with like the older man or whatever in the mirror.
Reflection.
Yeah, I was like, did she watch Wonder Woman 84 a few times and was like, you know what, it's a good idea, let's turn the whole Steve Trevor thing into a full film.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of parts, and I didn't know if it was because it's been 18 years since the last one came out or whatever. But yeah, I was kind of, well, one thing I did like is I liked how when you first see Neo and throughout the entire time when you're actually in the Matrix, there wasn't a green tint or any sort of hint or telegraph that you're in the Matrix. So for a large part of the beginning half of the movie, I was like, are we in the Matrix? Are we not in the Matrix? Did society rebuild itself to be like normal now?
Yeah.
I was just unsure where we were, when we were. And I thought that was actually interesting, that I was with Neo where I wasn't sure if I'm in the Matrix or not.
Yeah.
He had those like breaks of conscious where he felt like he was definitely in the Matrix, and he had like these, like he saw Morpheus and he saw all these things happen, and then things seemed to reset, or he took like some drugs and he was like, oh, I maybe just be having a psychotic episode or something. So I'm not actually in the Matrix. And so I didn't really know, and he didn't really know. And so I thought that part worked, but for the most part, yeah, I liked more him kind of having those issues, being suicidal. There's a thing in like real life where people are convinced that they're in a simulation and they need to get out, and so sometimes they will like try to kill themselves in order to escape. So I thought maybe that was where it was going to go, and it didn't really go that way.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's my biggest disappointment. Is I think there was a really good potential of a story for Neo, and they could have used it like they did in the first one, of just having it be an actual reflection on society instead of trying to just be like overly meta about it.
Yeah.
I also don't care for the ending. I thought the action scenes were actually really lacking. I hated the Merovingian cameo. I was like, of all the cameos you could have had in this movie, it was him. Why?
Right. They're like, hey, remember the Merovingian? And people are like, I remember it being a weird fucking word that you threw around.
Like, I remember him being the annoying French guy. Oh, look, he's back, but now he looks homeless.
Yeah. I agree the fights weren't as big or as prevalent as I thought they would be, but interestingly, the choreography and the actual fighting in the fights I thought were really good.
Yeah.
And I thought we're interestingly, noticeably influenced by later movies.
Yeah.
Like we have come so far from The Matrix, which changed action cinema forever and influenced so many movies. But since then, movies have continued to transform and change and improve. And then we come to this movie, and now you see The Matrix being influenced by other things.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I really like Neo tapping into his powers again. I really like him controlling the missiles from the helicopters. I thought that was really cool.
What do you think about him not being able to fly and Trinity flying? What is that?
Okay,
about?
The first viewing, I was like, God damn it. It's like, no offense, Trinity, but God damn it.
Yeah, I love Trinity. I just don't know why that makes sense.
Yeah, I was trying. I mean, that first viewing, dude, I was very much like, why are they making the choices that they made? Like, Lana, what are you doing? But I took like a week from watching Matrix Resurrections that first time. I watched it again just a couple days ago, actually, because I wanted, like, okay, I'm going to palate cleanse. I'm going to, like, watch a whole bunch of other stuff, and then I'll rewatch Resurrections and see if I, like, went into it with the wrong mindset or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did enjoy it more the second time around. There were decisions that I was like, okay, I'm okay with this now. I just think it's a little bit clunky. Mm-hmm. I could do without all the extra meta stuff. Trinity flying, I don't hate now. It kind of makes sense because they do talk a lot about, like, hey, you and Trinity as a union, like, that's when you're dangerous. And it turns out there's a lot of potential when you two are together. So knowing that and knowing, like, their connection and how they're able to share stuff kind of helps make sense that she would absorb some of his ability. Yeah. I do think it still feels a little forced. I think my favorite little nod, honestly, as meta as the whole movie is, I think the best callback they have is Trinity doing the scorpion kick again.
Yeah.
Which is like a split second moment, but to me, I was like, there you go.
You're like, she's back. She's right. Fully Trinity now.
I think Neil Patrick Harris as the new architect who is overly confident, and that is his downfall. I think that was a good choice. I like him as the new architect, actually. And it would make sense that he would put himself in the position to be the therapist who's making sure Neo is constantly under control. Like, personally, because we know what you do when you are not actually being controlled. So I'm going to make it a point to actually control you.
Yeah.
The guy that plays the new Smith, can't stand him as new Smith. Even on the second viewing, I was like, you lack all the cadence. You lack all the intimidation. You lack everything that made Smith such a great villain. You have none of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It seemed kind of secondary to the analyst or the new architect, and it seemed kind of like a Deus Ex Machina where he teams up with Neo at the last second to, like, save him. He, like, doesn't want to lose Neo as his adversary, and they both have a similar goal against the architect.
Yeah,
staying free, I guess.
And then he's like, well, our abrupt alliance is over now. And you're like, okay. Yeah, I was disappointed with Resurrections. I think there was a lot of potential there. I think it could have been a really great story. Had they made the story more of just focusing on Neo kind of being woken up all over it. Like, they do that, but I think they should have done it in a different way. And I think I think Lana Wachowski should have stayed away from being as meta as possible and pulling the Force Awakens mistake of just trying to recreate the movie, but in doing that, showing people, like, pointing out, look, I recreated this scene. Like, I hated all the spliced moments from the first Matrix.
Yeah. And it was always in a more funny way than they used to be.
Like, honestly, I think the best meta moments in Matrix Resurrections were, like, all the little statues. Like, the background stuff. That was well placed. I thought those, had they just kept with that, and then you could still talk about, like, hey, The Matrix was a trilogy video game that Thomas Anderson did really well. I think just leaving it at that would have been interesting enough, and then focusing on what Neo's life has been since being rebooted into the Matrix. I did have to laugh that the Smith statue that his boss has is him being punched in the face during the slow-mo rain punch scene. I also had to, like, My biggest complaint though with the new Smith, is not once does he call him Mr. Anderson. He calls him Tom like the entire movie, and the whole time I was like, no. He would not do that.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, I think Resurrections fell short, and I did go on to look at people's comments or like the consensus, and it looks like everyone was pretty much on the same page of like, yeah, it just doesn't recapture the magic of that first one. It doesn't.
Yeah,
it feels so unnecessary when you actually watch it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It doesn't capture the magic. It is nice that it doesn't completely change the overall message. Mm-hmm. At its core, it is still a movie about free choice and how most people, or sheeple as they call them in the movie, prefer the comfort of sleep over waking up to the truth. I thought that was interesting and relevant, but it's still a continuation of that.
Yeah,
they could have changed that, which I'm glad they did.
I really like Neil Patrick Harris in Matrix Resurrections. I think he might be my favorite part of the fourth film. I think he plays the character well. I love his monologue at the end where he's talking about people in general and what he's learned. They could have left that in, and that alone would have been a good enough callback because it still falls in line with how the machines operate. Yeah, I think that would have been good enough instead of them just being just overboard with it. So, I mean, it's been a while since we've done our scale. Do you have anything? Mm-hmm. I don't really have like a lot to add to the fourth one. It was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I feel the same way about it. I feel like it was fine. It was not terrible. If you love the original ones, you would have an enjoyable time watching it, but you're not going to love it. I don't love it. I feel like it was... I would also say that it's worse than the other three.
Yeah.
And for a lot of different reasons, mostly just what we've talked about, that it doesn't capture that whole aesthetic, and it tries too hard to be meta and complicated, even though the other ones do try to be complicated, but they try to be complicated in a more consistent way.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a new kind of complicated, which is more awkward. So I would give it around the 8-ish, 7, 8.
Yeah,
medium.
You and I are right at the same spot, which sucks to say because I was like, man, but it made me think though, and I was like, okay, Hollywood, I think we've hit a spot in this road of movie making. Maybe it's time to stop trying to make sequels that serve as like a hybrid reboot sequel kind of thing.
Yeah.
Of successful franchises from way back then. I think it's time, let the franchise be where it was, and maybe write something new.
Right. Or have the balls to actually reboot it and not just try to continue it and reference the original.
Yeah, like
this is the same timeline, but we're going to keep talking about the original one for the audience's benefit, not the actual characters.
Yeah, I think Matrix 4 really served as that. Like, I think this movie, if anything, could still have a positive impact in terms of maybe it's time we stop these like sequels after 14, 17 years. Maybe it's time to just, you know what? Let's leave those stories where they are. And if we're going to reboot the series, let's just reboot the series. Let's not try to do like this weird mixture. Just, yeah. So it made me nervous to see, like, we got Top Gun coming up, which is a sequel that's years upon years after the original. It's not a franchise, but I mean, it kind of makes you wonder.
I think there's probably a handful of movies, and we'll actually talk about these all next week, movies coming out this year that fall into that category. I also just realized when I said I'd give it a 7 or an 8, that don't know, that's not like on a scale of 1 to 10.
No, that's our scale.
That's on a dumb movie boner scale between 6 and midnight. Yeah. So if you're looking at a clock, this is towards the bottom, not a good score. I just realized that sounds like a good score.
No, it's our score from 6 to midnight. So us giving it like a 7 in between 7 and 8. That's still not. That's not at attention at all. Okay,
that's not what you want. It's a bad day, right there.
Yeah, no, it's funny to me because I'm like, man, like I love the Matrix. I genuinely love that first. Yeah. I mean, the trilogy is so good.
Me too.
Even with its flaws in the second and third, but I'm like, honestly, when I sit down, I'm like, I should watch the Matrix. It's one of those franchises where I'm like, I could watch just the first one, and that could be my like Matrix viewing.
Yeah, you don't need the complete experience.
Yeah, I don't have to watch 2, 3. I will be getting 4 when they release it because obviously I'm obsessive like that. And maybe the 4th one will grow on me over time. I didn't, like I said, I enjoyed it more the second time I watched it, but I think that's because I made sure to like palate cleanse the hell out of my brain. But I was like, man, you took a beloved character of mine and you just, I was going to say one more thing and then we should probably call it, but
yeah,
there was a moment and it pissed me off even the second time I watched it. I hate what they did with Niobe. I hate that character decision. I think it's cool that she becomes the general, but I hate how her character is. I'm like, judging from where we leave her in Revolutions, she is hopeful. She is like, she has faith. She is a better person at the end of Revolutions. We see her in Resurrections, and she's a grumpy old bitch who like doesn't want her garden to be disrupted. Like,
she's more interested in maintaining this new system she's created than actually achieving what she originally thought.
Yeah, and I think that's a disservice to the character. But my biggest, I don't know if I'll ever forgive it. What they do with the actual Morpheus character. So it's implied that he has passed away, but he didn't pass away a well-regarded man. She flat out tells Neo he had his group of fanatics. They were very religious, very like... I hated that. I was so mad about that. Still am.
Yeah.
I was like, did Lana Wachowski get in like some heated argument with Lawrence Fishburne and she decided her revenge was going to be like, well, then Morpheus dies a fanatic. Like, are you kidding me? If anything, Morpheus should be regarded as like basically the savior of Zion.
Yeah. 100% save the world.
Like, he should be regarded almost as like a mythical figure. He should be on that kind of... Her passion for stuff is awesome. But yeah, so that I like, even the second time I watched it, when she takes him into that room, immediately I was like, man, fuck you.
Yeah. I just remembered my least favorite part of the movie. The whole process of getting Trinity out of the Matrix.
For
some reason,
dual plug-in thing.
The way that's edited, where it goes back and forth between the girl who grew up from being the little Indian girl at the end of Revolutions. They're just like, they go back and forth between the rescue mission and the planning mission, and it's edited so weird, and I was like, I don't like how this is going at all.
You know, I also wish they would have done more with Trinity, story-wise, like her also kind of struggling with knowing or having that gut feeling that something's wrong. Because she never really questions it. She's just like, hey, I played your game. Trinity kind of looks like me. That's weird.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I'm married with 2 kids. Hey. And then out of nowhere, she's like, stop calling me Tiffany. I'm Trinity. And you're like, when did you wake up?
Yeah.
I thought the way they treated her reawakening was just clunky. I feel like that's a good word to use for Matrix Resurrections. It's a very clunky movie. It does not feel like a smooth story. Whereas like the first one, as complicated and crazy as that first one is, it's a pretty like you move.
Yeah, very, very well organized and well paced. You kind of expect. I'm sure they didn't plan for this movie from the very end of the last one, but you did also still had 18 years. I kind of expect a little more organized in this.
Right. Yeah, I can't help but feel that Matrix 4 was basically Lana Wachowski being like, I want to be relevant again in Hollywood. Let's go with the cash grab.
Yeah.
And
it's been a while.
And then it ended up not being that great of a cash grab for like
it's not doing great at the box office.
No, it's not. Which is that's a bummer. But make a better movie. I don't know.
Right. That's a good start. It would be different if it wasn't doing great and we were like, everybody should go see this.
Yeah.
That would be very different.
But it's worth a watch if you're a fan of the franchise. But that's our deep dive into the Matrix rabbit hole. There's so much that we jumped over, mainly because we're already at like 4 hours.
Trying to not bore you to death. I think we hit all the high points.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah.
And then next week, we're talking about 2022 movies that are coming out this year. Just going to place some bets on which ones are going to be good and which ones aren't. So we have a fun little game for next week.
Yep.
Talking about movies, and it'll be interesting. I need to watch some trailers.
Yeah, I have so many trailers I need to look up and watch. It's unreal. Yeah, it'll be interesting trying to figure out which movies are going to be like good or successful, all the little goodies. So that'll be a fun one for us. And I think that's it, right?
I think that's it too. Thank you, everybody.
Yep, thank you guys.
Let us know what you thought about The Matrix on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff.
Yeah, if you saw the 4th one and you think Jake and I are crazy for criticizing it pretty heavily, let us know.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.